Let's welcome Professor Chen Bu, Executive Vice President of the National Institute for Culture Development of Wuhan University and co-founder of the Sings China Academy, to open the forum. I announce 2022 Sings China Forum Summit formally started. Thank you, Professor Chen Bu. The report of the 20th Party Congress focuses on people's livelihood and further upgrades the desired life of people, starting from scratch to something good, and then striving for excellence. Starting at a new historical point, high quality of life has become the necessity of the times and the choice of development. Since theory, born in the context of the overall transformation of post-industrial society, provides an effective tool for us to find a key to transforming urban governance and reshaping the value of social space through theoretical innovation in a new era. Last year's Sing China Summit Forum, with an audience of nearly 680,000 people participating online worldwide, promoted the translation and enrichment of Sing theory practice and more effectively promoted the rooting of Sing theory in China. Over the past year, the Sing research team has been based on the evolution of globalization, modernization, and urbanization, paying close attention to the technological trends of digitalization, virtualization, and intelligence, and deeply combining the characteristics of participatory, experiential, and interactive consumption. Today's keynote speech is both a brainstorming session on Sing and life quality, and also a debriefing performance for colleagues and friends around the world who are concerned about Sing theory. So we're going to start our keynote speech session, and we're going to invite our first speaker of the day, Professor Marta Klekto from Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland. She'll be presenting the results of a research study that she has done together with Professor Terry Clark, a tenured professor in the Department of Sociology at University of Chicago. And the title of their presentation is Sings Analysis Tools, How to Do It. Let's welcome Professor Marta.
Yes, hello everyone. Terry, you would like to start? I'm going to show you our presentation.
Yeah, I will not speak about the slides, but if you could just go through them, I'll talk for 2 minutes and then be done. And you can read the slides if you like, as background only. We are living through a probably deeper and more profound revolution than the industrial revolution of the past. China is more complicated than other countries, it seems, as it simultaneously is having rural areas that have been there for centuries, it seems, whereas other countries seem more homogeneous, meaning that these transformations are deeper now. However, is this statement true? Can we convince ourselves and others, and how can we measure these? This is something which SEENS can help with, and that in turn can be a foundation for what is changing and what might we change better to be more consistent with those leading forces and leading changes across China today. SEENS are a tool which can help here, since there were 6 mentions in the 2021 5-year plan and some 200 papers published in Chinese. Today, we see speakers in a range of analyses from experts. But this first presentation with Marta Klekto will try to show you how to do some of these kinds of analyses. It summarizes a nearly 100-page report, which is in draft, and we want to try to aim at a broader audience for people who can use these with specifics. How can your local area use SEENS, and how can you analyze it with some simple and yet powerful and specifics? That's what we begin to try to show you, with not just what's in the background, just scroll through the other background items there, such as 3 examples from the China City Yearbook and other kinds of data which you can use to say, where do I place my city on these kinds of things? These are readily available kinds of categories. which we can use for seeing where and how we can understand and interpret the differences. These are some of the Chinese data sources, some of which are immediately available, others can also be illustrated here, the more complicated. Let me leave to the others, the four foreigners. You will see some efforts to show international comparisons with specifics, and I will leave it to them. And I look forward to learning tonight with all of you and discussing together. Thank you. On with Marta.
Thank you so much. So the booklet that we've been working for the last 6 months is intended to promote deeper analysis of culture of different size communities, to show various types of potential users how to apply the SCENES approach. So the booklet explains step by step the research and analysis process using different methodologies and sources of data. The booklet is intended also to invite participation with the international network of scholars and practitioners who share with us the belief that art and culture have great transformative power. And finally, the booklet is intended to advance international comparative research and policies. It is aimed to make these comparisons possible. So the booklet is for anyone interested in cultural analysis of neighborhoods, cities, towns, and villages, like BA, MA, or PhD student looking for a topic for dissertation, a scholar looking for a theoretical and methodological framework for a paper, a policymaker looking for an inspiration on ready-to-use solutions in cultural planning, activists looking for better understanding of cultural processes, analysts looking for innovative tools for cultural analysis, or anyone else, or a mix of aforementioned, which most of us are. In the booklet, we start with the definition of scene, and we provide examples from different parts of the world, which fosters better understanding of scene as a dynamic arrangement of place, people, practices of cultural consumption, and values that underline these practices. Then we move to analysis of data, analysis of scene, and we show how to collect data about scenes. Basically, we show some basic sources of data about amenities like business registers, Yelp, Yellow Pages, Google Maps, observation, and photography. Each of these sources has its pros and cons, and we discuss them in the booklet. We also provide some examples from international research. Here, for example, the example of using photography as a data source in the research by Chad Anderson. We also show how to build amenity database as a table in Excel file with a list of amenities in the size, the spatial units in the head, and the number of each type of amenity in each unit in the cell. Of course, different sources of data reveal more or less details on amenities. So, for example, the milk bar category that we obtained from Yellow Pages gives us much more accurate picture of the nature, the activity, and its clientele than the general category of catering activity that comes from Business Register. So this is good to combine different sources of data, and we show how to do it by building crosswalk file. Here we have an example from a Polish research. This is the crosswalk file with more generic categories like sporting goods obtained from Business Register, and we have more specific categories obtained from Yellow Pages like golf equipment, sailing equipment, etc. And we show how to calculate the total amount of amenities of these more specific and generic categories. Then we show how to make use of amenities, as this is the easiest way to start scenes analysis. So we show, for example, how to look for changes in number of a given amenity and compare them across neighborhoods or cities, or how to calculate indicators concentration of a given amenity, and how to define different types of cultural space. We also provide examples from international research. Here, for example, the example from the last year by Daniel Siever, who showed how by comparing trends we can develop theories of change. Using single amenities is of course the first step, but it's as single amenities as indicators may turn out to limit our understanding of urban culture. As potential elements of scenes, cultural amenities cannot be understood atomistically because what is being consumed is a holistic experience. So to give an example, when we try to pick a meal from restaurant menu, we take into consideration many factors, and we call these factors dimensions. And in the booklet, we explain how to transform amenities into dimensions by using our grammar of scenes with 3 basic dimensions: legitimacy, that defines the motives to drive the consumption; theatricality, that tells us what roles actors play; authenticity, that tells us what kind of identity actors develop. And we explain step by step in a very detailed manual how to code amenities, so how to transform them into dimensions, which kind of weight we should assign to definite case. We also provide examples and discuss difficulties, all the difficulties that the user may face. We show how to code, how to build amenities, the code database, and how to code amenities in an Excel spreadsheet with the coded objects on the side and the scenes dimensions in the head. And we also explain step by step how to do it and how to compare results. Coding out the amenities is the first step, but we need methodologies for using them to compare different territories to one another. And the basic measure for that is the performance score, which is the sum of the product of the number of amenities of a certain type and the weight given to it on a given scale divided by the total number of all amenities included in the analysis. And in the booklet, we show how to calculate the performance score. We show also how to build the performance score database. We show examples from international research. And then we move to how to use this performance score in comparing cases. For example, how to use mean centering to compare cases by comparing the deviation from the mean, or how to compare scenes by drawing cultural profile.
I'm sorry, Professor Klepto, only 1 minute left. 1 minute left.
1 minute left. Okay, yeah. We show how to use factor analysis for looking for basic dimensions, like how to identify the factor 1, for example. And we show how to use cluster analysis in which we can group cases and identify types. And then we also show how to use the performance score geospatial analysis and how to create maps of scenes. Apart from statistical analysis, we provide examples and rules of qualitative analysis. For example, Deviant case study, we provide case of Chengdu and show how to use Deviant case to study what is unique of this case and what lessons we can learn from it. We provide methodology for extended case study and also provide examples from international research, or how to run comparative case study with examples of international research. And at the end, we show to make our investigation more than descriptive, we show how to look for impact. So also examples from international research and the impact of scenes on economic development, voting, social movements, renting, migrations, health, communal practices, and many more. We show how to make the scenes approach more powerful in explaining different urban phenomena. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to professors for your excellent speech. Well, scene theory has given us a paradigm, and also it gives us an open source analysis tool, because we're able to know the analytic tool. So we're able to have a multiple and in-depth comparative research. So how to combine the local and the national features, and how to give the consideration of time and space, and to have the translation and application. This is the soul of the scene theory. And we're going to invite Executive Vice President Chen Bo from Wuhan University, and his topic is Culture and Tourism China. And let's welcome Mr. Chen Bo.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to talk about a recent development in my research. And me and my master students, Chen Li Hao, are doing this all together. The reason why we're doing this is because the urban and the rural revitalization is a really important thing for all of us, and even to the world. With the structure of this urban landscape and urban scene, we need interdisciplinary personnel to help us understand it. We want to provide you a different angle about the evolutionary mechanism of rural culture scenes, what is past and what is the future and what is the present. So we will see this like internal linkage. And there are three parts. First is spatial and temporal evolution and rural culture revitalization, and second is spatial temporal evolution of cultural things in rural China dynamical mechanism. What is promoting this kind of evolution? Thirdly, the social development models, exogenous and endogenous different models for the evolution of Chinese rural things. Now we are doing the research in this regard. So the first is a spatial and a temporal revolution in a rural cultural civilization. This is the first part. Now we are studying the cultural and the social factors in the rural revitalization. And I think a rural restructuring and also a rural scene revolution is a great perspective on the configuration of the countryside. And also we need to have really clear understanding of the essential characteristics and changing trend of village society. So in the process of implementing the rural revitalization strategy in an all-round way, it's necessary to form a relative view of the current rural scene, representation, and its evolution process. Thirdly, in ephemerality and scene evolution, feature trend in the study of a rural culture, and there are four things, 4D model for scene development, differentiation, defense, diffusion. We would like to see why the rural scene change, physical environment composition and design of community. Why do people there change? Why their activity change and why their value change? We want to know all about this. This is the second part, the spatial temporal evolution of a cultural scene. Rural China dynamical mechanism. This is the preliminary research result, because various changes that occur in the rural culture scene are reflected in the exchange of material, energy, and information between the internal elements in the system, such as the multiple rural subjects, people, objects, places, and environment, as well as between the external environment of the system, and the relationship between elements of the system is maintained in the form of flows, and the results of state of which can be characterized and explained by the characteristics of the rural culture scene and its evolution under different spatial and temporal conditions. We think that it's a really complex of elements linked together in a particular way, each of which has a fixed position and function in relation to system's goals. The evolution of the rural scene is the accumulation of the results of many points in time. And these are different dimensions of ours. And you can see the schematic diagram of the system components of the evolution of rural cultural things. We have, first of all, natural ecosystem, geospatial environment system, and social cultural environment systems. And we also have a multi dimension, which can review the construction and also the linkage between different stakeholders in this rural scene. And we also want to see the continuous evolution and the core strength of this complex system. And this is the dynamic mechanism we like to brief to you from the endogenous power and exogenous power. And you can see the rural culture seems rural multi-subject in the countryside in this production space by carrying out various production activity and documentation. Consumption activities form a certain structure and functional group. A collection of mechanism, the evolution of rural culture scene force mechanism to be divided into 2 dimensions. The data collection just mentioned by Marta is really important part of our work, but it's really challenging. We want to collect the regional data sets first, and we also want to create like knowledge map of Chinese rural areas, so the foreigners and also Chinese people can know the real look of Chinese rural areas. And these are the contribution of several social development models to the evolution of Chinese rural things. So you can see the contribution of several social development model to the evolution of Chinese rural things. We can start with the evolution development from the results of a combination of intrinsic factors and external dynamics. When new elements enter new rural cultural thing system and accumulate beyond the threshold of quantitative change, the boundary of the original system is broken, and we can see the manifestation of a spatial temporal evolution of regional spatial development environment, natural ecological environment, and social cultural environment, and multiple demand subjects, especially characterized by changes in the number of the cultural first amenities and their characteristics. And also we see individualization of behavior and value preference become obvious. Villagers no longer rely solely on tradition and experience. The influence of traditional authoritative sources such as Presbyterianism is gradually fading. On the contrary, they show their preference for individual economic interest and their behavior choices. Autonomy has a great influence on the structure, function, and value representation of rural cultural things. Also, only by the development of the modernity from traditionalism and communitarianism to individualism and rationalism, can we really see this development and this drive for change in value. And here we can see the divergence model as well, and also reconciliation. The mode of reconciliation is characterized by the change of people in practice. We have top-down and bottom-down 2 different models, mainly from external forces, for example, government management and planning, and from self-organizing power of villagers. Historical inertia in the collective memory plays an important linking role in this. And the 4th model is co-governance. A co-governance is the coordination of the conflicting interests of various systems and to fill a path for construction of rural cultural governance. And at this stage, both villagers' self-organizing capacity and the government-led measures appear to have certain limitations, and a non-coercive governance model constructed by integrating cultural factors characterized by soft influences needed to create a public cultural space in the cultural scene for joint participation. We also saw some really good papers with great basic models and analytical framework. All these will be combined together for the analysis of the 4 different models. And that's what is I want to report to you. It's not mature, and it's just a preliminary results of our research. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Okay, I hope that with the tool of the thing theory, by embedding in these theory into the analysis of our cultural development research, I think once it can be really integrated into this new spatial and temporal model, we can have a new growth paradigm created. As we all know, in the process of urban renewal, urban development, seeing iteration and space-time evolution, it has always been the direction of international thing research team to better obtain local information and carry out comparative research. Now let's welcome Professor Daniel Sear, professor of sociology at the University of Toronto in Canada, and one of the proponents of thing theory, to give us his keynote speech. The title of speech is using Google's Placer in making international comparison of information scenarios. Welcome.
Hello, and good morning. And thank you to all the organizers to again bring us together. It is exciting to have this opportunity to share our work on an ongoing basis and to continue to learn from each other. Last year's summit was extremely valuable to me, and the presentation I gave then led to a publication on modeling the evolution of scenes that we can already see, I think, inspiring new and important research. At the same time, I learned a great deal about the new directions in which Chinese researchers are taking the scenes concepts and methods, and I look forward to learning more today. Today, I am going to be sharing some ongoing research that I have been doing with Tiago Silva, who is a Brazilian computer scientist with a very strong interest in social research and in scenes. Together with his student, Fernanda Guber, they have built a new application that enables researchers to use Google Places to measure and compare scenes internationally. Google Places refers to the data on businesses and amenities and local points of interest that Google Maps is based on. We are now collaborating to develop this application further and to explore its uses. I'm going to summarize what this application can do, how we have used it to build some preliminary measures of scenes in the USA, Brazil, Canada, and Europe, and some early but promising efforts to validate these measures. First, some background and motivation for this project. We often consider national censuses to be the gold standard for social research, and for many purposes they are. However, for scenes research, they have some drawbacks, especially when it comes to international comparison. Each country, of course, uses its own system of categories, which are not always very easy to compare. For example, the set of ethnic groups or occupations or religions that one country measures is often very different from others, as are the sets of businesses and amenities that they count. Second, they often use geographic units that are very different in terms of their size and coverage. Third, they are, of course, in different languages. And fourth, in many parts of the world, data coverage is limited or unreliable. More generally, most national registries of organizations are more geared towards production than consumption. This is understandable given the historic priority of production over consumption in thinking about society and economy. But as societies shift towards consumption, the data collections of governments have not caught up yet. And last, independent of census, is the fact that our coding that we have worked with in the past in deploying the scenes theory has been based on United States and Canadian categories, data sets, built around the United States and Canadian National Census of Business and Yellow Pages directories of businesses. This makes it hard to use and evaluate the validity of coding on data from other countries and in other languages. Now, this work with Tiago Silva is geared towards trying to solve or at least to mitigate these problems. And today I'm going to go through the key steps in some high-level detail, starting with some features of Google Places that make it a good candidate for pursuing international scenes comparisons. First, of course, Google Places has very wide coverage, including about 98% of the planet. In addition, the available data is much larger than alternatives. This graph compares the number of places included in Google Places versus OpenStreetMaps for London, England, and Delhi, India. OpenStreetMaps is an open source tool where users provide information about cities similar to Wikipedia. Note how much more information Google offers in both cities. We see OpenStreetMaps here where it says OSM, this is Google, this is Google. Note how much more information Google offers in both cities, and that in a non-Western city like Delhi, the difference is even more pronounced. Google Places also provides data at the point level. That is, one learns the latitude and longitude of each amenity. Therefore, one can make consistent units across study areas. Here is an example where the researchers made 200 by 200 meter square grids to compare London and Barcelona. This approach can be used for any location on the planet. In addition, Google Places categories are consistent across all locations. Here's an example of categories used by Sen and Kersia, the researchers I've been whose work I've been pointing to so far. They used these categories to compare 26 cities in Europe, North America, Asia, India, South America, and Africa. Unfortunately, Nothing is as easy as we would like. When Sen and Garcia did their research, there was no cost to access the Google Places data. So they collected all of this data for free. Now Google charges for calls to their API over a certain amount each month. Moreover, when Sen and Garcia did their data collection, the available categories were not as fine-grained as we might like for scenes research. We would like to have, as Marta said, more differentiated information, for example, about the type of church, the type of restaurant, the type of bakery, and much more, so we can capture the types of symbolic meanings articulated in the theory of scenes. Last, the set of categories available on Google are very different than the categories in Yellow Pages or business census categories we have previously coded. So we would either have to code them afresh into our theory of scenes, or we would need some new method to transfer the coding from the previous data sets to these new data sets. The application created by Tiago and Fernanda mitigates these problems. Here is how it works. The first step is to define the area you are interested in. Here is an example showing Toronto in Canada. You drag that red box around the area you want to collect data for, and then the tool generates the appropriate latitude and longitude coordinates. The tool also divides up the area into overlapping circles, as you see on the right. This is because if you search the entire area of the city, you do not get as complete results. The preset circle sizes are the areas that have been shown to work well. However, you can make smaller circles to potentially get more accurate results. That just increases the cost. The cost is usually $300 to $400 per city. And this cost is based on the size of the geographic area, not the number of amenities. The next step is to then search for the amenities data in Google. Here, the idea is to sort of trick the API backend of Google Maps to give us the more fine-grained categories that we want. The actual Google Maps has many more fine-grained categories than are available in the default list that I showed you before. For example, if I go to Google Maps right now and search for Asian fusion restaurants or Seventh-day Adventist churches, I get many results for amenities with those categories attached to them. But to our knowledge, Google does not publish that full set of detailed categories. Therefore, we use a detailed full set of categories available in other systems. In this case, we use those on Yelp.com, another review website, which does make its full list of categories publicly available, and it is large, about 900 categories. The result is that we end up with data from Google Places on all of those 900 categories. We also get information about the latitude and longitude, the name of the business and the point of interest, the price levels, the average user rating, and the number of ratings. Here is what that looks like for Curitiba, Brazil, where Tiago is from. And then we see what we get, for example, for Toronto, Canada. We've done it for those cities and several others. So now that we have this information about amenities, how do we translate it into the language of our scenes theory? Google Places and Richer can be used to do this as well. Essentially, it uses a semi-automated computer language processor to match the categories that we coded in the past, in our past work on scenes, to any other set of categories. It does this based on the similarity of words in the categories. I say it is semi-automated and not fully automated because the results are not perfect and one needs to check them manually. We did this and made some corrections, but overall it is quite accurate. Having made this match, we can then calculate scenes measures for the new data sources. We did this both for data from Yelp.com and also for data gathered from Google Places. Again, these are scenes dimensions calculated for these new data sources, but based on the coding that we did in the past on different sets of categories. And the initial results are very promising. Here is a graph showing correlations of the full set of scenes dimensions for each neighborhood in Toronto, in Canada, comparing scenes dimensions calculated using Google and Yelp data, but again, based on the past coding of the Yellow Pages data that we used in our Scenescapes work. The blue indicates a high correlation. White is missing data, so disregard that. So we see a very strong correlation. That's very promising. Here is another graph. It compares the scenes dimensions calculated based on the Yellow Pages way back in 2008 in Toronto to those now calculated based on Yelp more recently, again, using very different sets of amenities. In general, we see good correlations and they get stronger in more recent years. This is because Yelp had fewer items in the data set in its early years. There are some other reasons why we would not expect a perfect match, but given the differences in the data sets, these are very good correlations. But how well does this work when we extend it to other countries that we never ever coded? Preliminary results are promising. Here is a dendrogram showing results for a cluster analysis. It is based on scenes dimensions calculated at the city level for Berlin, Los Angeles, Chicago, Toronto, Paris, Curitiba, and Rio de Janeiro. Again, the only information that is used in this analysis is the Google Places data, and the scene scores calculated based on transferring the coding we did in the past on United States and Canadian data sets to the Google Places categories generated for these other cities. We see that the North American cities are clustered together here, and Chicago and Toronto are more similar to each other than to Los Angeles. This is what this indicates. Also, the two Brazilian cities cluster together, and Berlin and Paris stand alone. This is all very good face validity. Last, we can briefly look at the specific scenes profiles for each of these clusters. This is shown in this graph. Note that these are z-scores based on the scenes dimensions for each cluster. This means that they show the average scene score for that cluster as 0, and then show which dimensions stand out relative to that average. Therefore, the result for each cluster are not directly comparable to each other. Rather, they show for each cluster the dimensions that stand out most for it. Again, we have promising results. This is the Brazil cluster. Scenes there emphasize transgression, charisma, self-expression, and glamour. The state is weaker. It's more informal, less rationalism. This shows the Chicago and Toronto cluster. It's more utilitarian, more neighborly, more egalitarian, and more formal. This is very much in line with what we found in Scenescapes, again, with very different data sets. This shows results for Paris. It has more tradition, but also more self-expressiveness, exhibitionism, and a stronger presence of the state. It is less corporate and less utilitarian. This is clearly very intuitive. Likewise, Berlin. It's more rational and it's more corporate. It's less charisma and less glamour. These are just initial results, and we need to explore what drives them, but they are very promising. Again, it is still a first step, and we have more to do in addition to understanding the basis of the results further. However, we see some very clear next steps. We'd like to compare more directly between the cities and not just within them and by cluster. Second, so far, we only have scenes dimensions calculated at the level of the city. We would like to move down to smaller neighborhood level analysis. Third, we of course would like to add additional cities, especially in more culturally distant parts of the world. This will both expand the analytical potential of this approach and allow us to test how well this new technique of transferring coding from one source to new locations continues to work. Hopefully, we can report on results at next year's summit. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Thank you for your excellent presentation. As a matter of fact, in China, there are a lot of scholars. They use Baidu and Google to get relevant information and resources to research the related issues. Google Places and Googling how to deal with information on Google Map also provide us with some reference. And also, I'd like to thank all our participants who are online. I know there are a lot of friends. Some of them, they have COVID, but they still participate into our conference today. In the recent 2 weeks, if they friend in Beijing, if you look out of your window, there is neither the morning and evening rush of traffic, nor the markets that are more than a match for each other. The city is extraordinarily quiet. However, we are looking forward to seeing awakening of a city, more hustle and bustle. So I'd like to share with you a topic. And in this special time, I also would like to talk about this topic. My topic is hustle and bustle, the context of high quality urban life. As we all know, hustle and bustle life and earthly life. So if the city can be awakened from the COVID-19 and also to come back to life, hustle and bustle is very important. Take New Orleans, Detroit. Well, for those cities, they experienced recession is because of their loss, their population. So they do not have a hustle and bustle city. So for a city, what is the hustle and bustle? How to explain hustle and bustle? Why it is so important? Some people say, well, if we talk about food and we know hustle and bustle is very important. And if we look, can see a crowded street, which shows the prosperity of a city. And it can also show the vitality of the consumption and the creation of clusters. So how can we measure hustle and bustle? How copy hustle and bustle city? Do we have any paradigm from 2020 to 2022? So among 70 Chinese cities, after they awakening from their COVID-19. And also we take the chemical periodical table, and also we measure the hustle and bustle main elements. Here, there are two main aspects and elements. The firstly is from the city perspective, and the second is from the residents' perspective. First of all, let's talk about if we look from the perspective of the city, a city full of hustle and bustle has a quite high light, high brightness, high density, high jinx, and high recognition, superposition. So first of all, let's talk about first element, high brightness city. As we all know, well, if you look at the nighttime, if you look at the light and the development of a city is correlated. So from ancient time to now, if you look at the brightness of city, which can show the prosperity of a city, well, no matter in Zhou and Xinlun, no matter in the Tang poetry and the Song poetry, for those ancient poets, we know a prosperity city has a very hustle and bustle night market and the night city life. Well, if you look at city satellite, and if you look at the financial distribution of the city, well, if you look at the night of the city, well, when the city is very bright, which shows this city is quite developed. The second element is high density neighborhoods and streets. Well, here, high density does not refer to the geographical high density. It means about amenities of the density. As we all know, for the quality life, it means easy, efficient, and convenient. And also it has a very good community. So the distribution of the amenities make a decision on the easiness and convenience of a city life. Well, professors, in your presentations, you also mentioned about the role of the amenities in analysis of Xing theory. Well, if you look at developed countries, tier 1 cities, if you look at their communities, neighborhoods, they have a quite density amenities like 24-hour convenient stores, coffee shop, etc. Let me give you an example in China. Well, 11,438 people own coffee shop, but for the tier 1 city, every 2,028 people, they are able to own a convenience store. And in Shanghai, 3,728 people own the convenience stores, which is quite high above a average level of the national level. Likewise, the coffee shops, well, if you look at hustle and bustle city, for the 10,000 people, they own more cafes than those underdeveloped cities. So for the hustle and bustle city makes the city is crowded and prosperity. Well, like the markets, grocery stores, convenience stores, neighborhoods, they are all the symbols to show a prosperity city. And the third is high recognition. The cultural characteristics and aesthetic style of amenities decide the recognition of the neighborhood and to show the style of a city and a feature of city. So as you can see, high recognition can show the city. So the temporary of a city is very important, which can show the characteristics of a city. So with a high recognition city means, well, we can see the geographical clearly, and it can show the cultural elements of the city. It can also link city's history and cultural memory. Meanwhile, it has the perception of urban security and gain. On top of that, it also have the entice residents to stay and thrive, and more residents will participate into the local life. Well, as you can see, this is also the competitiveness and the key competitiveness of the city. And also it is a key where we have a culture confidence.
And the fourth is all these self-confidence and self-improvement of culture. And you can see that we have this highlight effect of cities. For example, Sanlitun, Xintiandi, Languifang, Jifanglu. And these 24-hour city makes the night of the city as bright as day. And there are all kinds of live house and also all these fashionable brands. It's a kind of the people's yearning for leisure and free time and space, and an opportunity to escape work pressure and daily chores. All this can bring people strong emotional experience of happiness, excitement, adventure, fear, and pain. It shows the night represents a great area marked by rules, norms, and attitude different from those of the day. And we can also see it combines complex emotions of freedom, fear, mystery, joy, and bohemian. 24-hour transportation method is a really important component of high-quality cities. It can bring mobility to city. For example, the distribution of a shared bicycle is always in proportion to the prosperity of different areas of the city. Aside from that, we can also see that the use of time bike sharing is more distributed at night and is positively related to the frequency of public transport, night congestion, night economy, night driving, convenience of night public transportation, and heat of night public travel have often become the indicators for many cities to evaluate the night economy. Also, the prosperity of business recreational district is the core support of high quality living cycle, which makes urban life feel happy and safe. A mature commercial recreational area is determined by the 6C rule of space creation. That is the degree of grounding in the community, continuity, organizational structure, concentration, creativity, number of keynotes, and so on. The content, quality, and also the sequence of amenities decide the quality of business recreational district. Also, the interaction degree of the buzzing degree is the source of inspiration for high quality life cycle, which makes urban life full of vitality and creativity. At last year's forum, Dr. Xian and I jointly published a related research on the Sing paradigm, and this enriched the productivity from perspective the factors that affect the enrichment degree of things. It's those traditional and charming, innovative things that have shaped the spirit of the city, and those local industrial things with sustainable management have maintained their true spirit forever. And the enrichment of the things of a city reflects its wealth creation potential, and the productivity of the thing represents its sustainable development capability. You can see the creator of these potential and sustainable development capability are the heterogeneous, innovative groups living in the city. So all these factors I mentioned, although not all the factors that affect a city's prosperity due to the pandemic, even though it does not influence the hustle and bustle alone, but it can be the outline of a city full of vitality, motivation, spirit, self-renewability, and it shows our ability to meet spiritual and cultural needs. In addition, we find these factors that affect the firework that influence hustle and bustle can be expressed in things. For example, high brightness cities and high density neighbors measure cities' good neighborliness and the quality of life from its economic development or infrastructure construction. Therefore, they all flaunt their legitimacy. Legitimacy embodies the purpose of people's action. That is the feeling of goodness, a kindness. It includes 5 subdimensions: traditionalism, self-expression, utilitarianism and egalitarianism. The highlighted community reflect dramatic scene features. Theatricality is the way people look at others and to be looked at as the understanding of beauty. We also find you can see these different factors interact with each other in an organic way to form new spirit and to form new cultural features and show the unique hustle and bustle of a city. The combination of different factors also generate creativity and the charm of unseen tool. That's the end of my sharing. And that's all for the keynote speech of this forum. Thank you for your participation. Now let's take a group photo together. Please turn on your camera and our staff will take a screenshot for a group photo. Ms. Tu and Ms. Liu, you can take over from here. Please turn on your camera and we will start the group photo. Teacher Ganda and Teacher Xiaobo, you can turn on your camera, please. Also, Teacher Ying Licheng. So let's give them a second to turn on their cameras. The students online and the guests, please turn on your camera. Please turn all of your cameras on. We're taking a screenshot. Please look directly into the camera. Okay, that's the end of the group photo. You can go ahead with our agenda. Thank you, Xiaohan. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get into the next session. As we all know, that the string theory has been explained, interpreted in many different ways in the form of forum, paper, and other academic research. We've also published a lot of books and also magazines and journals. Now let's welcome Tong Yumeng to release 2022 China Sting Research Report. Tong Yumeng, the Secretary of China Academic Consortium. He has graduated from University of Chicago last year and has been deeply involved in the related work of the Sting theory. Welcome. Distinguished guests, experts, colleagues, friends from all walks of life, good morning. I'm Tong Yumeng. It's my honor to report to you today on behalf of all the members of the Sting Academic Association and the Secretary of the Academic Development Achievement and Local Application and Practice of Sting Research in China. In the last year, this year is the second year that Sting Academic Consortium was established. It was the 10th year that the Sting theory was introduced in China. In the past 10 years, the Sting theory has been developing in China. In 2022, our country has issued a policy texts such as the plans and opinions and found that building a new scene of digital consumption, developing a new scene of digital cultural consumption, and innovating tourism consumption scene have become new engines and development starting point to help countries achieve high quality development. From perspective of local policies, in 2022, Nanjing issued an action plan for promoting the construction of application things and leading high-quality industrial development. Not only Nanjing, but also Shenzhen, Ningbo, Huzhou, Haoji, Shenyang, Chongqing, and other places have successively issued policies texts on Xing construction and formulated Xing-oriented urban development plans. Following Chengdu's early advocacy of the concept of building a city with Xing, in the process of China's urban development, a new round of upgrading the Xing can be used in a richer, more flexible, in a more diverse way. For example, Yunnan province has included the creation of night culture and tourism consumption things in the 14th five-year plan. Chongqing advocates consumption thing with promotion of cultural tourism economy at the core and take shopping, commerce, life, and catering as the main dimensions, creating the symbol of mountain city with originality. Shenyang combines the Xing with the application fields of industry, agriculture, information technology, material science, and technology, and builds a 5-type economic application things with both regional characteristics and global integration. Other cities adapt to the local conditions, adapt to the situation, take root in the land of their local conditions, condense their characteristics, and constantly create diversified Xing dimensions that serve the public life, which also enrich the original framework of the Xing theory, from the central government to the local government, from economic construction to cultural development. Xing theory is gradually being applied to policy texts and practical practices, contributing to new schemes for serving the sustainable development of urban and rural areas and responding to spiritual and cultural needs of mass. In terms of academic achievement this year, the Xing Academic Consortium has been writing incessantly, publishing 9 research works successively covering many fields such as urban development, rural revitalization, integration of literature and tourism. As for publication of papers in the past 10 years, the achievement of applying the theoretical framework of Xing and broadening the dimensions of Xing have increased year by year. The influence of Xing research in China has become more and more significant. These papers taking culture as the main axis and referring to the paradigm of Xing theory. This paper discussed issues with important economic value and practical significance. Among them, 35 articles apply and develop Xing theories more deeply, and topics studied in these articles are diverse. Scholars in different fields, combined with specific cases in China, have shaped previous Xing dimensions, injected new vitalities into the Xing theory, and created new possibilities. The research methods used in these articles are abundant. Not only the statistical regression of traditional social science quantitative research, the grounded theory of qualitative research, but also the selfie method introduced in recent years to improve the validity through different expert scoring has gradually developed and matured. It has been applied in many papers of Xing research, which has proved the scientificity and the credibility of academic research articles and Xings. The results of these papers are published in core journals in architectural science, politics, and law, economic, and art. In addition to the data source of Xing research are more diverse. Research not only collect data through questionnaires, field surveys, interviews, and archives, moreover focus on user information feedback such as experience evaluation, which also makes the consumer perspective of Xing theory better displayed. In 2022, organized 3 high-quality academic salons, held dialogues with colleagues from Japanese universities, Hong Kong universities, Tongji University, and other famous universities, and promote continuous interaction between Xing theory and sociology, cultural industry, and other disciplines. This year, we savored the bustle and hustle of life, discussed the new expression of Xing, discussed the embedded relationship between highly educated groups and urban cultural tourism, promoted two-way mutual promotion between Xing theory and social development. Xing research, which had official account, continued to exert its strength. Added a new column called Urban Research Reading Club to share reading experience regularly, and number of fans increased by 30%. The consortium will continue to learn from the experience of the global research, explore the possibilities of the theory innovation, and practice serving China's social development. Thank you for your report. Okay, so we can see that from theory to application, the Xing theory and research has been put into practice. I hope in the new year, the Xing Academic Consortium can give us more positive explorations. I hope more of you can join us. Now, we will get to the session of the keynote report. I will give the floor to the host, to the Professor Zhang Bichun, as is host for this session. Can you hear me?
Sorry?
Okay, you can go ahead. Thank you, Qiji. Today's themed forum discussing an urban and rural construction at present development of urban and rural areas, increasingly showing new characteristics such as the transformation of traditional urban forming to consumption type, which poses new challenges to the urban and rural construction. The application of the Sing's theory has been further extended to the macroscopic level of urban development governance through the superposition and a serious connection of rich and diverse things. We can enhance consumers' experience, finally improve the happiness index of urban and rural residents. Now let's welcome Mr. Wu Jun and Mr. Wang Xingqi from the Sociology Department of Beijing Administration College to interpret the consumption scene for us. So the topic is consumption scene and exploration of construction plan path of international consumption city center.
The sound is okay. Distinguished guests, experts, faculty members, students, friends online, good morning and good evening. I come from China National School of Administration. I am Wu Jun. It is my pleasure to talk here. We and my small team, and we have been working on Sing and the relationship between Sing and cities. My topic is explorations of consumption scenes and the path of building an international consumer-centered city. And this is the small result. And we take the example of Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu. This is our preliminary research. If we want to culture an international consuming city, actually, this is an outline for the 14th five-year plan. And this is a big action and a plan. So the consumption scene, it is a theory tool. This tool is important for the landing of this outline. And also it provides a reference. By operating a consuming scene, we're able to perfect and complete function of a city to improve life quality. Therefore, we're able to have a sustainable strength and competitiveness of cities. This year, we work with the Central Party Administration School, Community University of China, Central China Normal University, Hunan University, and also we have a journal. This journal's name is Modern Urban Research. The topic for our topic is the practice of consumption scenes. There are 5 papers, 5 articles. Next, I am going to co-work with my team, and I am going to select 1 paper to report our presentation. But also we have done some extension, and also I am looking forward to your feedback. Wang Xiuqi is going to do the presentation. Good morning and good evening. I am Wang Xiuqi, and I am going to report to you our topic. This is our contents. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the background. As you can see, under the 14th five-year plan, if we want to build an international consumer-centered city, consumption scenes, if we want to achieve those 2 goals, and we also think about how to practice those outlines. First of all, we need to interpret what is the idea and the interpretation of international consumer-centered city. And we interpret this standard city from 2 levels. One is urban level and the other is national level. Urban level means urban development strategy. National level means serve new development pattern and take the consumption scenes. The basic mechanism is amenity system, cultural consumption, and extension means help improving the quality of specific city. And also in the city practice, if we look at the extension, and we need to combine it with the life quality, and also we need to think about the local consumption. Well, here, how can we combine these 2 together? And how can we build a multiple city consumption scene? So first of all, we need to think about when we look at some pilot city to have the international consuming city. So some pilot cities has already adopted Sing concept. It shows some kind of affinity. Of course, different cities, they may have some difference and some commonality by applying the Sing concept. So by looking at and figure out the different levels, different dimensions use of Sing theory, we're able to explore the correlationship between the consumption Sing and international consumption center. Chengdu practice. Chengdu is the earliest city to transform Sing as a systematic development strategy. Well, it's based on the ancient Chengdu culture and lifestyle. So Chengdu life is quite relaxed and comfortable. So by operating a Sing and also have different consumption subjects, and also it combines both the ancient style and the avant-garde style, and to build a hustle and bustle city, different incentives, different values have been developed in Chengdu. So as you can see, this is the overview of the 8 consumption systems in Chengdu. On this table, you can see it's more than a consumer to come into a place and to select the services, the goods, but it looks at the building of the things. So as you can see, this is a two flowing, for example, for the theme types, and it may connect to some international consumers. So by portrait them, so they may have some atmosphere, cultural atmosphere, and it will have some design shops, shop more, so that those consumers are able to consume and spend money there. And also for the things characteristics, as you can see, for the extent, the experience of Sing among different group of people. The second is Beijing practice, function-oriented things using. International consuming center city of Beijing is different from other cities. This is because in the master plan of Beijing, it's clearly to state that Beijing is economic center. So if we would like to build a consumption center city of Beijing, actually it's not very strong, it's relatively weak. So in the Beijing city level, there are 3 dimensions for the international consumer center city. First of all, Beijing is a capital city. That is why Beijing needs to have a quality development. And the second is to expand domestic needs. And third is to adapt to people's life needs. Well, also in the Beijing official documents, there are 7 times to refer to the concept of Sing to be used. Also in the International Academy, this is also have discussion on Beijing International Consumer Center. For example, in the practice, Beijing has a very good historical cultural resources. So we can promote like cultural tourism, and also we can promote time-honored brands, etc. But like I have mentioned, well, Beijing International Consumer Center, actually, this is a top design. First of all, it has some function more than economic orientation. And also in the basic logic, also we need to meet the needs of people. They desire better life. And that is why on one hand, we need to serve a culture center, international center. On the other hand, we also need to think about the consuming experience of consumers. That's why we need to give more consideration of functions. The last one is Shanghai practice. Well, Shanghai, during its building into international consumption center city, there are 7 blocks and 28 main tasks. The 7 blocks are, well, to promote, integrate global consumption resources clusters. Well, here, Shanghai clearly to mention that upgrading new things for consumption and to stable the commodity consumption, to expand service consumption, and to promote the commercial digitalization transformation. So it focuses on the technical use of Sing. Of course, while Shanghai is building this international consumer center city, it is more focused on and clearly to promote the upgrading of the city. So it's quite economic oriented. Here, as you can see, we have different use levels of the consumption Sing among Chengdu, Beijing, Shanghai. Now, I would like to move on to my conclusion. Based on the Sing theory, the affinity between consumption and the international consumer center city. Sing theory in our policy practice, it has a very innovative expression of the consumption Sing. If you look at the commercial ministry and the state of council, it also mentioned about the building of international consumer center city. And also in some big cities, we also have some big models, even though there are different models. And we need to explore on those differences on the practical models. Here is my supplementary ideas. Practice from academic field to policy field. This is my conclusion. Firstly, I'd like to talk about how can we move from academic field to policy field. Firstly, we need to look at the affinity. Well, the concept of thing, when it put into practice, it also have different consumption things, and it may have different expressions, and also it has its practical characteristics among different cities. We have different practice and goals, and also we have different use on the concept of the thing. So for the conclusion, contribution made by consumption things international consumer center city, we focus on the culture consumption and the service consumption, and means we need to upgrade our consuming needs. Based on thing theory, consumption is treated as a two-way selection process between consumption things and consumers. Because all we have different traditions, now we're able to use internet to meet needs of our consumers. And also, if we want to build international consumer center, we should not only focus on offline because the space and time are limited. So how can we activate those things? We need to think about the consumption and the direction. You have 30 seconds to go. Last but not least, consumption thing is widely associated with local quality in different fields in China. And also we need to think about the quality level. And if we build the international consumer center, it should not only look at as a top design, but also it also needs to adapt it to people's needs to meet their desire for better life, exploration. We need to explore the further use of the thing theory in China. And also we start from the concept of thing theory. We would like to explore other and international consumer center possibilities. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wu Jun. Thank you, Mr. Wang Qijun, for your excellent presentations. Next, we welcome Maxime Chaffrey from France, now assistant professor in the Department of Government and Society at United Arab Emirates University. His topic is comparing top-down vs bottom-up urban scenes in different French cities. What impact on social and economic inclusion? Let's welcome Maxime.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for. Can I share my screen or? Okay, 1 minute. Okay, this one. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you. I want to thank the organizer for inviting me for this conference. The topic I will present today is comparing top-down versus bottom-up urban scenes in different French cities and what impact on social and economic inclusion. So in this topic, I use data downloaded from Yellow Pages, French Yellow Pages, and census data collected by the French Statistical Institute, National Institute. And we gathered different types of data regarding culture, and that I categorize between top-down and bottom-up. So what I consider by top-down is mainly institutions that are publicly funded and supported by the state, the government, as opposed to amenities, urban amenities and cultural organizations that are somehow developed independently from bottom-up. So let's start with a few things about French cultural policies. France is famous for having strong cultural inclusive policies, and it started since the beginning, the creation of the French Ministry of Culture in 1959 after the Second World War. And the idea of the French Ministry of Culture from the very beginning was to develop not only cultural life in Paris, but outside of Paris particularly. And it was particularly the idea of the French Minister of Culture, André Malraux, who started this process of developing and creating new cultural institutions everywhere across the country in different French regions, and not anymore only in Paris. One of the strong intentions from these policies was particularly to develop national cultural policies, and through that, the idea to convert the population to the national culture. we need to understand that the French cultural landscape is diverse. It's one of the biggest countries in Europe, with Germany and Poland. And therefore, it was a challenge for the French state at this time to somehow homogenize and unify the country through national policies. So the idea of conversion from the very beginning is very strong idea. And the André Malraux idea was to somehow create, through these new cultural institutions across the country, the new cathedral of the 21st century. Today, it is still important when you look at how the relationship with culture for French people. It is still a strong idea when you attend or participate into a cultural institution. So national cultural institution is still considered as an act of citizenship. So when you attend a cultural institution in France, supported by the state, somehow it is still an act of citizenship. It is also true in some other countries, particularly in Europe, but not only. So this idea of inclusive power of top-down cultural institutions has been criticized by Pierre Bourdieu in the 70s and 80s, particularly, who questioned this power of these institutions to include and somehow convert the population to the French national policies. He demonstrated that the development of these cultural institutions created some inequalities, and particularly, he addressed the fact that they were not so much accessible to the whole French population. So through his studies, he particularly identified the class effect, and symbolic violence produced by top-down cultural institutions on the non-public. So the non-public, the people who are not attending these institutions. And it can be memorized through these quotes: the museum is important for those who go there insofar as it allows them to distinguish themselves from those who do not go to the museum. So another aspect that is important and ongoing in France nowadays is the rise of immigration. And in the current context of increasing migration across Europe, it, of course, creates new challenges for French cultural policies to somehow assimilate and include these new populations into the French national cultural life. So, of course, rise of Islam and importation of foreign non-European cultural practices, music, dance, folklore that are non-European, creates new issues and challenges for these national policies to incorporate them into the national life. So the question is, how can French inclusive cultural policies deal with populations that do not identify themselves with national culture, or sometimes even feel rejected from it? So how can we, how can cultural policies integrate these new practices, and what if they are not integrated and start to organize themselves independently from national policies? And on the other side, we can also ask how a concept like multiculturalism and cultural participation being redefined by cultural institutions depending on local policies and social context. So how these institutions react to the new cultural reality developed in France. So for this, I started to develop the idea of top-down versus bottom-up urban scenes and the impact on social and economic inclusion, how these different types of amenities impact inclusion. So first question could be raised as how is the urban landscape of cities impacted by top-down or bottom-up cultural dynamics? How do top-down cultural dynamics and scenes contribute to social and economic inclusion? And how does that compare with bottom-up types of urban scenes? And three, which cities are developing more social and economic inclusions based on these different dynamics of urban scenes? So here we have two pictures such as Garnier Opera in Paris, which is of course cannot exist without the support of the state, as opposed to bottom-up type of urban amenities developed in other cities, such as in Marseille in the southern France. So this is the reason why I choose two case studies, because I will not address today the whole different type of cities in France, but I will discuss particularly focus on two case studies such as Paris and Marseille because of their highly contrasting profiles. Paris, of course, is the capital of France and is traditionally more impacted by top-down cultural policies because, of course, the government is in Paris. And because of that, the city counts the largest number of top-down cultural institutions and amenities, while Marseille, however, is somehow the antithesis, the anti-model of Paris. And for decades, the city of Marseille developed almost independently from national cultural policies and therefore emphasized more local and bottom-up cultural dynamics. So Paris is one aspect that can explain that is that Paris is impacted first by the architecture. Since 19th century, the Haussmann architecture somehow developed a specific identity of the Parisian lifestyle, and somehow that was raised by the painter Gustave Caillebotte in his painting Street of Paris, which emphasized somehow the bourgeois lifestyle and somehow formality and traditional type of urban scenes. Marseille, however, is of course not so much impacted by architecture, although architecture has interesting patterns and aspects. But Marseille is clearly more impacted by its own environment, the Mediterranean Sea, because it's nearby the Mediterranean coast. So the sun, the light, and of course the weather. So the environment is much stronger player in that sense compared to Paris. So what makes Marseille's urban scene so special compared to Paris? So it's important to ask these questions, particularly since Marseille hosts some of the poorest neighborhoods in Europe. Some neighborhoods are, particularly those populated by immigrant populations, are indeed among the poorest neighborhoods in Europe and in France. However, since 2013, we can see a change in Marseille since the city has been designated as European Capital of Culture by European Commission. And more recently, even the European Commission designated Marseille as European Capital of Innovation. So there is something going on here in Marseille. And the idea of scene analysis should reveal this. Also, some neighborhoods, particularly I would say Bohemian neighborhoods, have been ranked as the coolest neighborhoods in the world. So some other magazines and newspapers, such as New York Times, BBC, are constantly, regularly praising Marseille as one of the most interesting and attractive city in Europe nowadays. So how does Marseille compare with other cities in France? And here is a graph that can give us an idea how Marseille is different. So here we are comparing 4 major cities, but Paris represented twice. Paris as a city municipality and Paris with a suburb, because in Paris it's important to include the suburb, the Grand Paris, because Paris is not limited to the city, historical city anymore. It's including now more and more the suburb. So second city is Lyon and third is Marseille. So when we compare with different scenes analysis between cities, we can see that Marseille in blue is somehow more ethnic than others, similarly with Grand Paris, and somehow a little bit traditional as well, but less than Paris. So Paris, however, is much more exhibitionistic, glamorous, formal, self-expressive, charismatic, and traditional. So this has been raised by Daniel Silver just before with the Google data analysis. Which is interesting.
Sorry, Professor.
Yeah.
only 1 minute left.
Yeah, I'm finishing. I'm done. So then when we look at different cities, we can see that top-down cultural institutions are having less impact on employment compared to cultural associations. So bottom-up amenities have more impact on employment. And here when we compare with two maps, where the first layer is about with color is about immigrant population. The darker the layer is, the largest number of immigrants you have. And in red and blue, red are top-down cultural institutions, and green bottom-up institutions correlated with employment. As you can see, Marseille has more impact on bottom-up urban scenes related to immigrants' neighborhoods. So conclusion, cities and neighborhoods with more top-down policies and dynamics tends to be less multicultural than others. Second, immigrant populations tend to have more social and economic inclusions when they are connected to bottom-up cultural dynamics rather than top-down institutions. And three, employment and innovations tend to be more driven by bottom-up urban dynamics and scene. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. I'm done with the presentation.
好，非常感谢马克西姆教授的。
Thank you, Professor Maxime, for your great speech. Now let's welcome the professor from National Institute of Culture Division of Wuhan University, the National Cultural Relics Financial Policy Research Institute of Wuhan University, Director of the department, Professor Xiaobo, to share with us the urban-rural mutual assistance and space reconstruction. It's my great honor to share with you here. I just get started with string theory, and I changed the name of my slide, Urban Rural Mutual Aid and Space Reconstruction, Scene Construction Strategies of Rural Bookstores, and it's a joint slide with Hu Xi. So first part is diversion of entity bookstore from urban to rural. The second part is the scene element analysis and amenity system of rural bookstores. And the third part is value dimension of rural bookstore cultural scene. And the last is a scene construction strategy of rural bookstore. We can see the expansion of city and also the urbanization progress has been accelerated. But these bookstores are quite different from the city stores. So it's a really unique phenomenon. Most of these rural bookstores are on pilot basis. So I'd like to have an analysis of this type of rural bookstores. So the practice of rural bookstores construction in China, you can see major part of them are Xinhua bookstore. Xinhua group of each province building local rural bookstore actively with a private brand bookstore like Librarian Avant-Garde and the Fangsuo and also Yanji You. And on the left side is the rural bookstore from Lishui, and the right side is the bookstore in Henan. They combine the local characteristics with the construction of rural bookstores. There are a lot of research on rural bookstores. There are basically 4 types: the development course, development status, the pattern, the bookstore, and the revitalization of rural culture. Also, the rural bookstore from perspective of cultural tourism, but only very few about cultural space and scene construction of rural books. So we would like to dive deeper in this regard. So scene theory provides a cultural dynamic analysis and framework for regional transition. And rural bookstore in a new era promote the reconstruction of cultural space innovatively in the form of urban rural mutual aid, stimulating the vitality of rural transition development.
And also, it will realize a sustainable development. Meanwhile, it will help the revitalization of rural area. Well, in my second part, I'd like to talk about the Sing elements analysis and amenity system of rural bookstores. There are less rural bookstores, and the time of the establishment of rural bookstores are not very long. So we take some case studies to do analysis. Rural bookstore is major in big cities, and rural bookstore is the thinking of the entity bookstores. The characteristics of it is combine the culture, brand. So this is a symbolic meaning like culture aesthetics, quality brand. So the Sing theory is very applicable to rural bookstores. So here I'd like to talk about 5 categories of elements. The one is neighborhood, including rural community, urban, rural relationship, reading community. Second is equipment, like space of rural bookstores, leisure culture facilities. And the third is the population. The fourth is activities. And the fifth is the values of the Singscape. So here, a lot of rural bookstores, they have their own symbolic meanings, features, and they have some brand interactions. Amenity system of rural bookstores. Generally speaking, there are 4, like natural, cultural, institution, and social amenities. The third part is according to the dimensions of Sing, and we're able to know the authenticity by observing, gazing, consuming, and experiencing the real rural symbols and cultural symbols containing rural bookstores. The participants generate emotional and value resonance, thus forming identity and cultural belonging in the Sings. Actually, there are 2 dimensions. The first one is for urban tourists. They're able to immerse themselves into the rural bookstores to discover themselves. And when they participate into the consumption of rural stores, and it's like a leisure lifestyle of urban. So they desire those natural life, rural life, and they have some expectations of rural life. And also they want to avoid hustle and bustle life in city. So here, as you can see, for the urban tourists, they're able to awake their cultural memories and their inner authenticity. And for villagers, actually localize the design, local integration of the rural bookstores will help them to build a connection between modern bookstores and rural daily life, so that the villagers, they're able to achieve self-identity confirmation and recognition of their local places and the country. And also here, if you look at the theatricality, well, if you look at the scene, the behaviors, it will have the influence on the consumer's behaviors, and also the self-expression and action between customers and the workers in the real rural bookstores. And the last one is, well, the fourth is the special emotional experience of customers in rural bookstores, such as novelty, friendliness, relaxation, comfort, openness, and pleasure. So in this kind of interaction, customers achieve emotional communication and to present their ideal self. In terms of the legitimacy, on one hand, the Sing can affect value orientation and judgments of the participants. And also, they have a new value responsibility. So all in all, if you look at the dimensions, there are 3 main dimensions like authenticity, theatricality, and legitimacy. So here, if you look at authenticity, it includes rural, ethnic, state, government, enterprise, corporation, knowledgeability, and for the theatricality, include design, urban-rural relationship, novelty, leisure, openness. In the legitimacy, it includes protective renewal, value guidance, utilization, etc. So here we have some analysis on cases. We have a suggestion, but this suggestion is immature. Returning to authenticity, take authenticity, for example, we need to constructing rural bookstores with local culture characteristics. And also, we need to build a reading space. And thirdly, we want to encourage villagers to join the activities. In terms of adding theatricality, we pay attention to space aesthetics, enhance the attraction of rural bookstores, and also we have the cultural rights of villages, to play active role in rural culture, promote rural revitalization with rural bookstores. So it also play a role of the rural governance by using different ways. We hope that we're able to achieve interplay between urban and rural areas to rebuild the space. Thanks for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. We'd like to thank Professor Xiaobo for your excellent speech. After your presentation, we know what is a rural bookstores, and we will talk offline. Well, I'd like to thank our 3 professors. Thank you for your excellent speech. Now, I'd like to welcome Professor, Doctoral Supervisor at Communication University of China, President of Beijing Jinhe Institute of Culture and Tourism, VP of the China Culture Industry Association, member of the 14th Five-Year Plan Expert Committee of the Ministry of Culture and Tourism of China, Professor Fan Zhou. Please give some comments. Good morning, Mr. Zhang. Oh, my picture looks a little bit cartoonized. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It is my pleasure to join your discussion and to listen to your presentations. For 3 professors' presentations, I can learn from you, from your presentations. Some internet connection problem from Fan Zhou. Fan Zhou, Professor Fan Zhou, something wrong with your internet connection, especially Wu Jun, when he talked about the exploration of consumption things and paths of building an international consumer-centered city. And also he gave examples of Beijing and Shanghai. Well, for building an international consumer-centered city, different cities may have different actions. They have their own features and characteristics. And also they have done some analysis. They have achieved some preliminary result. But like our reporter who just presented part of their research, Mr. Maxime Jaffrey. Well, I do not understand the English, so after listening to the interpretation, I know his topic is comparing top-down versus bottom-up urban things in different French cities. We know cultural policies in France. There is a top-down. Top-down is mainly carried out, and also for the cultural policy will be an overarching policy in the French development. But also it gives some right to some provinces or some countries in France. So this is a top-down policy. Top-down policy give a feature of the French culture. Since I've been working in the culture industry for many years, and I can see the strength of this top-down in France. I think it is quite competitive with China. Well, for the central government, well, they introduce the foreign culture and to be localized in France, or the international design brands, if they want to promote in France. Of course, they need to get consensus and approval by the central government of France. Well, for the culture ministry, they have to do some approval and they have to do some synchronization. So here, Mr. Maxime, he talked about the top-down and bottom-up urban things, which also shows the inclusion, highly inclusion and utility, the French culture. Well, the third, we listened to Professor Xiaobo. He's talking about urban-rural interplay and spatial re-engineering. I'm quite interested in your topic. And I think if you can do this project better, in the future, you're able to write a paper, an important paper, because a lot of people, when they study rural bookstore from Sing theory, this is quite new. I've never read this paper from a Sing theory to explain rural bookstore. So I think this is valuable and it has a significance different from the rural bookstores. I think this bookstores is different, though there are a lot of examples. Those examples are about traditional bookstores. However, if you look at the traditional bookstores in today's construction, those traditional bookstores have been transformed. To my knowledge and to my observation, in the north part of China and in the east north part of China, if you look at those rural bookstores, different from the traditional rural bookstores. There is a big gap and difference, which means the population, customers, and the way they promote their bookstores, and they do the commercial marketing. Those are our new recognition and understanding on the rural bookstores. Of course, we also see a lot of rural bookstores. They have the multiple presentation. Well, for some a very mono feature rural bookstores, or for example, it's just a rural bookstore. It's quite intuitively, we know it's a rural bookstore. This form is less and less. But if you look at the rural bookstores, have multiple functions, and everywhere it's quite popular. And sometimes it's a part of a culture, and sometimes it's just like a culture market in the rural area. To my knowledge, in Beijing Tongzhou area, in Beijing Tongzhou district, the building of rural bookstores, well, it combines with a built-for countryside building. So for the bookstore, need to combine with the local culture, and also we also need to give a response to the canal of Tongzhou district. So I think, Professor Xiao, your project is quite meaningful, and also you can give us a guideline. And I think you need to have more time to hone your paper and the theme. And well, I have some comments, and also I'd like to discuss with you my suggestion. I also learn from you. On one hand, we need to focus on the empowerment of Xing. Based on the Xing theory, we need to promote the development of urban and the rural areas against the different backdrop of systems and policies. For example, we use the Xing theory, and the Xing theory needs to be applied to the development of the rural urban areas in new era, new times. So I think for our three speakers, they give consideration, and maybe you can give profound thinking with the new era. I think for people, they pursued life quality in urban and rural life, so they have new needs. Well, in June and in July this year, our biggest national company, Liaoning Ocean and Fishery Company, well, in the design and the transformation, this state-owned company is going to build it as a conglomerate. Well, in the 1949, this is the first state-owned company owned by the CPC. But of course, for this company, it also needs to adapt to the Xing theory and to combine with its oceanary and fishery functions. As a matter of fact, I do not give comments, rather I learn from you. And secondly, I think infrastructure is important. We need to have a good infrastructure. For example, one of the professors mentioned about consumer Xing to empower the new consumer, especially for the second part, Mr. Wu Jun, he studied Beijing, Chengdu, Shanghai. Well, for the secretariat, not give them enough time to talk about their presentation, but from his short presentation, we know for those megacities in China, those megacities development will influence those middle-sized cities in China. Well, I also joined Beijing discussion in terms of the consumption Xing, in terms of the International Consumer Center for Dubai, for Tokyo. Well, once this big project in Beijing is localized, and I think it's landed, I think it will give us a big shock. So what I'd like to say is the construction of the infrastructure is important for us to study Xing and for young scholars. Please pay attention to the construction of the infrastructure. Since normally speaking, what we can get those infrastructure. I don't think the infrastructure can meet with our imagination. We used to offer the new infrastructure for digital economy, but also here, I'd like to ask you to think about the infrastructure for the Xing theory, especially for the infrastructure of the new consumption things. For the interest of time, I will stop quickly. The last part is when we talk about the value mining of the Xing is very important. For Professor Xiaobo, I particularly prefer your topic because in our Chinese academy, still there is a blueprint. So we need to have a mining on the thing, and also we need to integrate the thing with the local culture. And this is the path for Chinese thing study to work on. From this sense, I think recently we just announced China 2 offices for the strategy outline for the people's needs. Here, it particularly mentioned about online and offline different consumption forms. And also in 2023 to 2035, during this period of time, this is a big event for the Chinese economic development. It also provides a good research and a landing policy guarantee for things that are in China. For the interest of time, this is my comment. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Thank you, Qi Ji. Thank you, Chen Bo. Thank you, Zhang Bichun. Thank you, other professors and experts. Thank you very much. Thank you for your originators to initiate the thing. Well, I've been learning from you for 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fan, for your great comments. Thank you for your wonderful speech. And also, I'd like to release a set of statistics to you by 10:45. Now we have 578,000 viewers, and there are about 140 million viewers on Sohu, and also 248,000 in a NetEase platform. Now let's get into the theme forum 2. Welcome Mr. Wu Jun to host. Okay, now let's get in the forum 2. The theme of the forum is theme and cultural space, and also public policies. Cultural space can be large museums, art galleries, etc., or small restaurants, bookstores, cafes, grocery stores, and even community activity center. There are also some like square dancing can also be a really important part of cultural space. Space makes individuals feel aesthetic pleasure, spiritual enjoyment, cultural and edification, and even influences their life and their work. There are 4 speakers in this session. The first is an associate professor of Beijing administration colleague, and we also have other 3 speakers. I'll give introduction later, and we are also very honored to invite Hui Jian to be the one who makes the conclusion. Now, let's welcome Associate Professor Ying Licheng to give us his report on From Academic Concept to Urban Policy, the Politicization of Theme Theory. Can you see my screen? Yes. Hello, everyone. It's my honor to participate in this forum to learn from you. The topic of my slide is From Academic Concept to Urban Policy, the politicization of Cingscapes, a study of Chengdu. And we need to know how academic concept become policy concept, and the also analysis framework of policy process perspective. So all discussion will be around China's conditions because each country is different. And we also take the policy process perspective to understand these concepts. And Chengdu is a really classic city that use Theme theory, a part of their policy concepts. And then I will have some discussions and conclusions with you. Now we see more and more academic concepts become policy concepts. For example, social governance, urban renewal, urban rights, they turn from academic concepts into policy concepts. And we will naturally think what types of academic concepts can enter public policy and how do they become public policy. And for these two questions, seeing concept give us a really good example. For example, the new Chicago schools of teachers have discussed meaningfully about the concept of seeing. I think seeing is a conceptual tool used to quantitatively investigate urban culture. And it also has some new features related to policies. So we also quote some policies from different places in Beijing, Shanghai, Chongqing, Chengdu. For example, in Beijing, it encourages development of new consumption model, new business types, and new escapes. And in Chengdu, there are relevant policies for creating cities and park cities through Xing Chengdu. And also Chongqing built a same system of landscape city and a beautiful place and building a beautiful life scene with people as center, scenery, and a feeling. So we've been thinking about what is the relationship between academic research and the policy. In the interest of time, I cannot systemically interpret all those researches to you, but the common thing about these researches is to take those research as a condition or as a model to turn the concept into policy. They think about it structurally and take it as a condition, take it as a model or as elements. In my perspective, turning academic concept into policy is a process. And the politicization of a concept is also a process. And we should examine the impact of academic concept from the aspect of policy preparation, introduction, implementation, and further development. So I turned my thought into this picture. The 4 dimensions can be further broken down into 4 stages. In the first stage is the academic concepts being seen by policymakers. So during this stage, the preference and also the needs of decision maker play a big role. So what needs to be solved is the affinity between academic concepts and decision maker. The second stage is academic concepts become policy text to express the concept and requirements of governance. It is of great significance whether academic concepts can help to deal with specific policy issues. So it's necessary to solve the problem of policy functionalities of academic concepts. The third stage is that academic concepts become policy practices, and the implementation of those concepts should be further detailized into specific policy measures. Whether the concepts can form an operable scheme is very crucial. In the fourth stage, we need to constantly enhance the importance of academic concepts in the policy system and constantly highlight their policy value. At this stage, it's really important for a relevant concept to make good use of the resources and policy in the academic system and constantly enrich their own connotation system. So these are the 4 dimensions around the theoretical framework. I like to study Chengdu from the 4 dimensions. We know Chengdu has brought forward the Xing application in 2016, like teacher Wu Jing just introduced. So it's also a city with relatively perfect scene policies. It's a good case for us to investigate politicization of academic concepts such as scene. So I think we can observe Chengdu from the 4 dimensions. First is about affinity issue. We would like to see how Chengdu use things to answer the question of functionality. We also like to see how it practice the thing into the policy implementation and the reproduction of policy brand. First is meeting the needs of decision maker. We need to think about a question: what concept Chinese urban decision makers or governors need? What is a good concept to those urban decision makers? So based on our surveys and investigation, we think we have 4 points to make according to the interview. First of all, it's a concept that can be connected with the major strategies of the party and the country, and it can be creatively expounded. Secondly, the concept should conform to the characteristics of the city and should be able to used to tell a story of the city. Thirdly, it should have wide popularity, good reputation, and positive influence. Lastly, the concept should not be controversial. It should have no risk of use, especially from perspective of public opinion, and the scene can perfectly match the above 4 dimensions. So it first enters the vision of Chengdu policymakers. Scene include value and space. It's a concentrated expression of local consumption experience in both value lifestyle, which is conducive to the expression of national strategies as new development concept and a park city. And scene can actually bridge new development concept and park city. You connect the requirements of the central government to Chengdu to its practical implementation. Also, Sing is very suitable for telling the story of Chengdu. It's not a story of investment, of making efforts, striving for better life as Shenzhen. Chengdu is about culture and focus on the quality of urban life. Also, Sing theory is well known and influential, and also Sing theory has something to do with Chengdu from the very origin, but I cannot elaborate on that. Also, Sing can find its foundation in the local context. We see that Sing theory has a good foundation here in China, even though it's imported from outside. For example, decision makers in Chengdu do not think Sing is a foreign concept. I think it can be used to manage the city in economy, consumption planning, and in interest time, I will have to go quicker. And in the field of urban economy, Sing is regarded as an important policy tool to solve specific development problems in new economy. And also in the field of commercial consumption, Sing is used as a key to stimulate consumption interest and enhance consumption attraction. And in terms of an urban planning, Sing is regarded as an effective mechanism to create a beautiful and livable park city, but not in every scenario that Sing concept can serve its purpose. And in terms of the practical application of a Sing theory, Chengdu use guiding, tasking, and listing as the specific practicality. And for guiding refers to a series of methodological principles and specific action guidelines. And task-oriented is to break down the concept requirements in the policy documents into specific work tasks and define the responsible departments and specific implementation plans. And for list oriented is to collect needs and resources related to Sing creations in the form of urban opportunity list. And we see that Chengdu has been building a brand of urban policy, reproduction of policy knowledge of Sing. It keeps regenerating new things based on the existing things. Lastly, conclusion and enlightenment, how to realize Sing policy in Chengdu. First of all, Sing is a good concept that can be explained very well for policymakers, and it has played an important role in solving the urban policy problems of Chengdu. It also transformed into practical strength through 3 mechanisms: guide-oriented, task-oriented, and listing-oriented. Finally, Sing is constantly polished and refined in Chengdu, and it can also be reproduced and disseminated citywide. And these are the enlightenment that policymakers can get from the process of Sing policymaking in Chengdu. In the interest of time, I cannot read one line by line. So thank you for your listening. And thank you. Thank you for your speech, Mr. Ying. And he takes Chengdu as an example to elaborate on how to turn Sing theory into urban theories and serve the practice.
And also he mentioned about affinity, practicability, and knowledge reproduction. He mentioned about those features of Sing. By applying those functions, so it will serve our life better and practice better. For the interest of time, there are some details and cases he do not have time. He didn't have time to speak in more details. To my knowledge, he's already published his article into the City Research Journal. If you are interested in his article, and you can search his article online, and you're able to get access to his article, and you can discuss further with Professor Ying. Thank you again, Professor Ying. We're going to invite our second speaker, Zhong Shen, Associate Professor and Director of the Cultural Tourism Planning Center of the National Institute for Cultural Development at Wuhan University, and Ms. Xia Dan. Their topic is Urban Physical Bookstore Sing, the meaning of culture space and the path for optimization. Professor Zhong, the floor is yours. Good morning, good day. It is my pleasure, with the big support of our host and organizer. And also I'd like to thank Mr. Wu Jun. Thank you for your moderating and introduction on me. My topic today, and I'm going to report this topic, is our recent research. We focus on the urban bookstores, and we'd like to talk about its culture space connotation and optimization path. Professor Xia also mentioned a similar topic. First of all, I'd like to explain why do we choose bookstore, why we choose bookstore as our research background, amenities, and the very important thing in the city. Well, I think for all of us, if you pay attention to the bookstores, well, among many cities, the development of bookstores is very quick. And also we need to pay closer attention to the culture thing. Well, a lot of cities, they claim they have the most beautiful bookstores. And also there are a lot of bookstores, operation, business models, mortality. So to our knowledge, we think bookstore is a good thing to enhance the life quality of city. And also it's a carrier of a space. Take Wuhan, for example. How many bookstores in Wuhan? Well, we have not seen a very concrete statistics, but we have a 3 million RMB fund to sponsor those bookstores. Of course, for each bookstore, they receive a very small sum of money, but we can see a lot of development of bookstores among cities. So for so many years, according to our observation, when we looked at the development process of the bookstores, we think bookstores can explain a classic culture. It used to be a commercial space. Step by step, bookstores can integrate, it becomes a culture community. And this is the development path for the bookstores. We think bookstores can represent the development and enhancement of life quality in cities. But here we can see different types of bookstores among cities, and they have business models, and also they have some business modalities. I will not give more details here. Why do we choose bookstore as our topic? Why do we report this topic? This is because for the bookstore is very important to connect people's emotion and the spiritual world. And also for the post-industrial city, when the city is transforming, it also helps us to build a humanity city, and also it helps us to enhance the essentiality of the space of city. Well, last year, for the 3 ministers, they also announced the opinion on promoting public culture service quality development. Here, it clearly states that we need to integrate reading, fine arts exhibition, culture salon, and the light food. Those will be integrated into the bookstores. And this is small, but it's very beautiful. Secondly, I'd like to elaborate on the culture space connotation of the bookstore scene. To our knowledge, the bookstore scene conveys different cultures, aesthetics, and value orientations, different from bar, cafe shop, art gallery. I think it has some, we can compare our bookstores with those places. And also it contains different cultures, aesthetics, the value orientations, and also it can reflect the culture spirits of a city. Well, if you look at a Chinese context, well, it particularly reflects a Chinese culture. For example, we see there likely to read books, and also in the city, for people who pursue the quality life and who want to have a city which is comfortable and which is good for people to live. So for the bookstore, first of all, it's aesthetic space. Firstly, so we know there is a fragrance of books, of knowledge. So it connotates the features of beauty. And this is a good combination of the beautiful architecture and books. Well, if we talk about the bookstore, as a matter of fact, it's also a consumption space. So here it provides a space for consumers to consume. So consume and culture space, they are intertwined. Thirdly, it's a reading space. It for us to acquire knowledge, to share knowledge, and to have communication on our knowledge, and to have some brainstorming here. So this is a reading space for all of us. And also, bookstores is also social space. It's very important for people to have interaction here, and we may have brainstorming, and we may have some deep discussion on certain points of view. That is why bookstore as a cultural space, it is combine the aesthetics, arts, reading space, social space. So this is a new generation of urban cultural quality. This is the life immersions. But the third part of my report is problems. And especially when the urban bookstores, they have their transition period, they have some problems. Well, just now I emphasized on the strengths of the scenes of bookstores. When we do our interview, we have noticed that during the transition period, well, if you look at their physical situation, if you look at their survival states, especially during the COVID-19, well, the income of the bookstores has been greatly affected. And a lot of bookstores, they cannot operate anymore. They closed their stores. And for many places, they have some policy to help to sponsor the bookstores. However, those policies are not powerful enough. Take Wuhan, for example. Wuhan government allocate 3 million RMB. There are 76 bookstores, but for each bookstore can receive only less than 50,000 yuan. So here are some problems. Unclear in public culture attributes. During our survey, we noticed that a lot of bookstores, they have a very strong architecture, they have a very beautiful architecture, But in terms of the public culture attributes, in terms of the art value, it's very hard for us to measure, especially in the field of public culture area. So it's very hard for them to get enough sponsorship. And the second problem is the weak ecology in bookstore industry. So the bookstores have impact, are facing impact like COVID-19, e-books, e-commerce. So the bookstores, they have a heavy burden in terms of the cost, human cost, and loan. So in terms of the business operation, they have a very weak ecology. And the third problem is the heavy assets in cultural space making. Well, for the initial investment of a bookstore, the initial investment is huge. Well, it can be shown in the gaining between commerce and culture. And we can see the first stage investment is very big. So it's a kind of trap when a bookstore in their operation, well, they are not very active. And the first one is homogenization in scene experience, like the most beautiful bookstores. Well, if you observe those most beautiful bookstores, you can always find something common, so that those bookstores, they have lost their space spreads and space values. Finally, I'd like to give some suggestions on the development path of bookstores in China. Here, we have a very important idea. From scene making to scene operation, bookstores as a fusion of culture and a commercial space. So we must transform from the operate to the business operation of scene. So for a bookstore have a beautiful space. More importantly, how can we do a good business in this scene? How can we do a good operation? So firstly, I'd like to talk about policies. Do we have innovative policies to support bookstores? And also we have done some exploration. For example, or if we want to build a city with a lot of bookstores, and how can we promote or extend or integrate the reading space with the community and the government? How can we use the form like government purchase public culture and to promote the integration of the bookstores and the public libraries? And also, how can we use government allocated property to expand the space of the bookstores? Secondly, I want to talk about creating bookstore scene with a unique design style. So I think for a bookstore, they must have a very local features. They have a clear local features, especially to build a new scene IP of a bookstore and to have an IP operation and also to build a kind of authentic atmosphere. Mr. Zhong, you have 30 seconds. And thirdly, in terms of the function, you must have multiple functions. We focus on the culture and also to enhance the aesthetic. We help our population to have a better aesthetic feelings on the bookstores. And the fourth one is strengthening the bookstore's emotional experience and the connections. And we think this is something scene can play important in this regard. To have emotional connection, it's emotional bond, and to enhance the atmosphere interaction between the people and the book reading to have more cohesion and interaction. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Zhong Shen. Thank you for your excellent speech. The transformation of bookstore from a scene perspective, Mr. Zhong shared his research. After listening to your report, I'd like to say something. In China, we have a thinking, if we read a lot of books, which means it is also a very great help for us to have a better appearance. So if you talk about each family in China, well, if we're allowed, we hope we will have a study room so that people can read book at their home. So for a city, how can a city have a better culture atmosphere? How can we, through the quality and the bookstore, so how can we enhance the literacy of the city dwellers. I think city bookstores play extremely important role in helping the city to improve its literacy. However, like Professor Zhong, you mentioned, for a lot of bookstores, they are facing the problem of transformation. Well, for his research, he empowered the space to empower the transformation of the bookstore to explore the solution. And also he offered some innovative vocabularies like seeing operating, seeing business operation, etc. So here, we hope that in practice, we're able to complete your concept. But I think for a bookstore transformation in city, how to solve the problem, you have already offered your solution to solve these extremely important problems. Sting has provided a good perspective to do the analysis.
Reference also opened the store from an art gallery to a bookstore. So the bookstore was well operated. If you are interested, you can go there and talk to him to see how he transformed his bookstore into something new under the influence of Sting. Thank you, Professor Zhong. Now let's welcome the third speaker, Assistant Professor Fu Siliu, and also Professor Geng Da from Yunnan University. Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Wu. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce to you the paper that I published with the help of my master degree student. And the topic is research on the creation of cultural space along Yunnan-Vietnam Railway in the context of a Sting theory. We have the topic basis, research content, conclusions, and discussions, the three parts of my slide. The railway, Yunnan-Vietnam Railway, is the first railway in Southeast China. Is the earliest railway from China to Southeast Asia. It's the longest narrow gauge railway with a gauge of 1 meter in China. Its total length is 854 kilometers, connects Haiphong in Vietnam with Kunming in Yunnan. The 465-kilometer long railway in China section was built in 1903 and opened to traffic in 1910. Now it has over 100 years of history. It's the most influential railway in the world, and it's also one of the world-famous projects 100 years ago. It was once praised by British Daily as the third largest project in the world, comparable to Suez Canal and the Panama Canal. Yunnan-Vietnam Railway has played an inestimable and important role in various social and historical periods. After 100 years, Yunnan-Vietnam Railway still plays an important role in traffic, economy, trade, and cultural exchange. There are more than 200 cultural relics along Yunnan-Vietnam Railway in Yunnan province. There are a lot of cultural heritage. In 2018, Yunnan-Vietnam Railway was selected into the first batch of China Industrial Heritage Protection List. The Yunnan-Vietnam Railway between China and Vietnam has gone through 3 stages: freight and passenger transportation, a stagnation and transition, and integration of culture and tourism. At present, as prominent representative of linear cultural heritage, the development of Yunnan-Vietnam Railway mainly focuses on the integration mode of culture and tourism created along the line. We see the identification, application, operation, and maintenance of the Yunnan Vietnam Railway. But in this new era, we start to put emphasis on a consumption-based scenario for consumers to actively participate and engage. And also, we mainly see the culture and tourism development mode along the line. Based on the Thing theory, the thinking method and analysis framework of Thing theory, the discussion of the current situation of cultural rebirth of industrial heritage will provide a new research perspective and a case evidence for the exploration of regional development issues. Now, for the Thing study, we either study a single thing, for example, bookstore, industrial park, or we compare different case studies, different points of view, different perspective, compare different categories. But for linearity study, we didn't see that much, especially when it comes to the connection with the local economy, social relationships. So I think Yunnan Vietnam Railway can be a really good entry point and a good model for us to learn the relationship between Thing and cultural space, economic factors, social influence. Because this railway was designed and built by French architects and also designers. There are a lot of buildings, amenities along the line that are French style. You can see the picture here. There are a lot of memorial museums. And a very famous site is Mengzi Station. A lot of people go there to have a look. After we know all these background information, we started to do analysis of an amenity structure along Yunnan Vietnam Railway. We don't think amenities just museum, cinema, theater, and other facilities which directly related to the culture in the literal sense, nor is limited to the architectural facilities in the urban space. It should be some material structure creating clear symbols and meaning in the existence of urban and rural to element society. So this paper selected 6 stations along the railway for the collection and analysis of amenities. In Yunnan capital, starting from the capital Kunming to Yilan to Kaiyuan city, especially that section is the most characteristic 食品各就开源蒙自 section of the railway. This section has a history of fighting for the railway right from French people, and Shiping Jianshui City also witnessed the Shiping Commercial Commission paid on its own for the construction of this section of railway. So we have a lot of history and elements in it. It has some urbanization touch, but also mixed with this historical data very rich, especially Mingzi Bridge. It's also part of the section. The railway passes a lot of mountains and rivers. During the construction, it was really hard. Yunnan residents devoted themselves and even sacrificed themselves in order to build this railway. So that's the history background. We sort out all these cultural heritage and sites along the line. And in interest of time, I cannot elaborate on that. And these are 6 main stations along the line. And there are also really good examples in the development of cultural and tourism. And we chose Kunming, Gezhou, Cixi, Tianshui, Pingbian, 6 stations, and different cities and counties have different themes. For example, in Kunming, we have the Yunnan Railway Museum, Kunming 1093 theme park, French style street, and Crystal Slope station. And in Gezhou station, we have Gebing Linking Railway Company former site, and also the trail along the lake and also can be seen in Gezhou station. And Mengzi railway station also has some French reading groups as tourist attractions for people to visit. If you want to have a visit, you have to book it in advance. You want to take a train. You have half a minute. So Chinese consumers like it so much. And in my city, we can see the construction of cultural space along Yunnan Vietnam Railway. It's no longer limited to providing traditional tour experience with single historical narrative, but to reproduce the scene by preserving the material remains while giving new cultural symbols to achieve the dialogue between the present and the history. And for a specific scene performance, we're based on Clark framework and also the scale to the course. We designed a relevant scale as well and adopt the expert scoring method. We've also do some survey with consumers and also relevant personnel. In the interest of time, I cannot explain in detail. Lastly, we can have a few takeaways. The first is how to balance the social benefit and economic benefit, and especially the historical and cultural significance should be highlighted to realize its cultural consumption value. And another thing is
Hilarious, New York.
Is the utilization of resource-intensive benefits, interaction with external perspective. Also, especially for local residents, how we can guarantee their benefits, because railway is state-owned entity, how to make sure all the stakeholders can work together to guarantee the benefit for locals. This is a worth discussion. In the interest of time, I cannot interpret it even further. If you're interested, can privately talk to me. Thank you for your listening. Thank you, Professor Geng. It's a really great research. From perspective of my research methodology, we can see a new logic for analysis. Most of us seeing studies, just like Professor Geng said, some of them are based on single cases, temporal spatial single case, or the multiple analysis based on space and time. And Professor Geng gave us some linear explanation analysis of space, especially you can see the object is itself vertical. And now I like to share with you a set of data. Now we have we have a lot of viewers through China Report network and also NetEase website and also Sohu website. The number of viewers of this forum as of 11 p.m. there are 6.83 million viewers so far. Now let's welcome the fourth speaker, Associate Professor Wen Wen from Shenzhen University to give us a speech on the inheritance and innovation of folk literature in the Sing application. Thank you for your sharing. I've learned a lot from listening to your speech.
Well, it's my pleasure to share with you our stage research. Well, I'd like to talk about inheritance of folk literature. Well, this can help us to help local people to recognize local culture, but also it gives the elements for the folklore lovers to create some new stories. So it relates to some folklore and customs. So it's quite addictive and it's quite faithful, and it also have a local feature. So take the legend of the white snake from the local and from the virtual perspective of the thing, and also on the basis of its text to give the consideration and the exploration on its cross-regional broadcasting, and also to place some imagination, and also based on those analyses to extend the future development paths for the legend of the white snake. Well, from the Tang Dynasty, there are different versions of the verbal tale and the book tale. And we come from the Song Dynasty. This is the Three Tower Tale of Western Lake. And also we choose Mr. Hong Menglong in Ming Dynasty. And also the play from the Qing Dynasty, Fang Chenpeng, the Tower of Leifeng, and we do some research. Well, when we study on the narrative, and we have seen that there are some space and literature, well, to have some plots of the tale. For example, the main characters, they meet each other in the West Lake. And also here, it also mentioned about the human and the non-human. Well, here it also give a scene like Hangzhou, Suzhou, Zhenzhou, and also it mentioned about how they meet together. And also in the Leifeng Tower, Mr. Fang, who gave a consideration, and also he write a lot about the local features of the place. Well, here, if you look at the white snake, well, the white snake, well, he is the fairy tale image, and he used to be a snake, but then she becomes a lady. Then she met a young man and they married together. So as you can see, this is the flow of the story. Well, from the Sing perspective and from the local Sing perspective, the legend of the white snake, when it is approved by the National Culture Ministry, and it also talk about the connection between the story and the local culture. And also it is a very important carrier for people to know their local features. Take Hangzhou, for example. Well, they rebuilt Leifeng Tower, and this is a thing. And also in the Xihu West Lake, they also have the events. And this is also the showcase of this story in the local places. Well, in terms of the cultural recognition for the tale, well, it relates to a lot of festivals. Well, the festivals has its periods, and also year on year, and we may have the same festivals. And for the non-intangible cultural heritage, will enter the campus, and also for the folk art team, they also have their self-initiative events. By doing those activities, local people, they have a better understanding on their local culture. Well, if you look at the art performance, well, for the intangible cultural heritage, and they have some talk show about the tail of the white snake. And also they have art performance on the tail of the white snake. Well, if we look at the crossing, well, it refers to many cities in Jiangsu province and Zhejiang province. So when they apply for the literature intangible culture, both Zhenjiang and both Hangzhou cities, and also they apply for it. So here it have the traditional Chinese opera, like Yang opera, Yue opera, and also there are a lot of TV drama and entertainment shows to tell the tale of the white snake. And also for the international art performance, like to go to Korea, United States, America, and also they have some film adaptation on the white snake. So the tale of the white snake is promoted internationally. Also, we use modern technology, and also we have experienced ideal change. Well, for this tale, the tale of the white snake, it happened in one place, but it promoted nationwide and internationally. So the tale of the white snake got some new inspirations. Well, here we also see some film. The film is adapted from this ancient story, the white snake. And also they use the digital technology to reconstruct the aesthetic space. And also people can go to the theater to enjoy the film of the white snake. And also in China, we have a Bilibili, and young people, they access Bilibili to know the story. But in terms of the virtual thing, well, for the folk literature has become a digital culture resources. And also for some players, they're able to play the game like the white tale, so that they're able to join the story and they're able to jointly to recreate the story. And also for the mobile game is also have the green campus and the white campus. And also they have a scene like the water is floating, the Jingshan Temple. So for each player, they can choose the character, they can choose their tool, and they go into this narrative space, and they'll go back to share how they play the game and how they over the difficulties to achieve the final win result. So as you can see, though we have a very ancient tale, ancient story, but we use the game as a carrier. And also for the literature field, a lot of people, they may play their imagination in the story. So let's talk about the future past. Compared with other tale, the legend of the white tail is quite popular and famous in China. And it's quite popular literature, intangible cultural heritage. So we have a complete protection, and also it's sharing, and it's quite open for the public population. So a lot of people, a lot of creator talents, a lot of business investment, they prefer the story of the white tail because they support love freely. And also it also have other kind of intangible cultural heritage like traditional Chinese opera. Well, in terms of the inheritance and the innovation practice of the tail of the white tail, also we can see some combination of the real scene and the virtual scene. But here we still have some problems, like we can not have a very good connections between different subjects. And for Zhenjiang, intangible cultural heritage has already collected text information. Those text is over 400,000 words. Well, the Zhenjiang local government, when they want to protect those kind of intangible cultural heritage, they are lacking of talents. So the process is quite slow. And also there are a lot of adapted films, TV dramas, and they have achieved very good physical results. But for the verbal telling and for the local opera, for those kind of intangible cultural heritage, they do not have a great support from the government. And also for some adaptation, the adaptation actually lose its true value, lose its trueness. And thirdly, for the inherited subjects, they are lacking of communication platforms, so they have a misunderstanding on the information. For example, for some civil team, like the Association of the White Snake Tail, and they have cooperation willing. Unfortunately, they cannot have a very good cooperation with the official agencies. So here for the future path, and we also need to give a consideration. Firstly, we can build a civil culture, or we can work on the intangible cultural heritage. Secondly, we should have a very free-flowing and coordination on the different things in terms of the innovative elements. So capital, resource, technology, and talents are very important production elements. And also we must have a multiple paths and to have an innovative way. For example, we can combine this tale with tourism, with TV, film industries, so that we may build a new thing. For example, we need to tell this story and we need to promote this story, and we must have an immersive experience of this story. And also we can do some adaptation to meet the international market and to tell the world the Chinese story. Thank you. Time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wenwen. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Brilliant. Well, we are very pleased to have Mr. Wei Jian, editor of Journal of Shandong University Philosophy and Social Sciences, and he is going to give us some comments. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, our 4 reporters. Well, I learned again the same theory, and I have learned your presentations in the first session, second session, and third session. This year, we have made a better improvement, and we have deeply promoted the same theory. Here, I'd like to talk about my comments on the 4 topics. The first topic is from Professor Ying. Professor Ying, his topic is urban fiscal, from academic concept to urban policy, the logic of converting the concept of scenario into policies. So how can we apply the theory of the scene to the policies? And he gives us a very detailed elaboration on that. Especially, he mentioned about we need to meet the needs of the city. And also he mentioned about how can we play a full role of the scene theory when we build our city. This is very important. Secondly, he mentioned about how do we landing the scene theory into our urban policy. So finally, in the last part, he mentioned about the city brand production, scene can play a role. So it shows that it's a showcase of interaction among policy and the concept, etc. And the second topic is from Professor Zhong Shen, a study on the creation of cultural space for the bookstore scene. Yeah, the bookstore in the city is a big problem. Mr. Zhong, who mentioned about, is it a public goods? Is it a commercial goods? So should it provided by the market, or should government assist the physical bookstore operation? It's very complicated. Some bookstore, they have the public attributes, but some bookstore, they would like to operate independently without disruption of the government. So I think this is a very important concept. So how do we operate a scene? If we can operate a scene better, so if we can continue to have some good income, I think it can have a very sustainable development of the scene, and it's also our powerhouse to develop scene theory into practice. And for Geng Fan, it's a linear study, and he's talking about the creation of culture space along the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway and the perspective of scene theory. And he mentioned a lot of history, legacy, and also he mentioned about a foreign culture, like culture from France, and also some local ethnic groups, they have their own very unique culture. So here, as you can see, it's like a dot, but those dots have not been connected into a line to have a common IP, common scene. So by studying those amenities, by have the scoring system of those amenities, so it's a dialogue between the modern time with the historical time. So I think you need to connect dots into line, and also we need to start from a single dot, and we need to move from a dot to a line so that we are able to have a better understanding on this topic. Lastly, Wenwen, she's talking about the legend tale of the white snake. Actually, this is a modern time communication of this ancient tale. And her perspective is, how can we promote those literature intangible cultural heritage to find a better communication route or path? Well, it's very important. Well, it has a very strong local characteristics. Take the white snake, for example, it has the second feature. Well, it has different ways to inherit this story. It has a wide distribution geographically, Zhenjiang, Jiangsu, Hangzhou. Well, for those places in Zhejiang province and Hangzhou province, they are telling about this story. And also we have a lot of festivals, those festivals to repeat this story and to show the story repeatedly. So we can see a very diversified way to inherit this tale. So this story is not very strange, it's not very foreign to local population, but also the communication of this literature in tangible cultural heritage have a lot of problems. So since it have different places, we must have a community. And the second is we need to share the key elements. And also we need to have a multiple way to tell the story. It's quite inspirational for me. For the 4 proposals, 4 articles from different perspectives, they gave a local case studies to show the Sing theory, how to apply Sing theory into Chinese research and the Chinese localization application. The advantage is Sing theory is an overall framework and a perspective to discuss those issues. Well, I think we can have a deeper discussion like, firstly, and we need to think another problem.
We should think about what problems we want to solve in the application of an Sing theory. Is just like some high quality development, or it's like the really real problems that need to be solved. So for Sing theory, when the first introduction of the theory in China, the Professor Clark, they gave scores to existing amenities and then gave some improvement guidance. And in China, a lot of cities, they do not have such amenities. They need to build amenities in the process. And into this paper, we can saw that when we have a lot of amenities, we can do a lot of work. But when we do not have such amenities, for example, like Zhongsheng said, a bookstore. Bookstores cannot be called amenities now. And also the stations of Yunnan, Vietnam Railway, are they really amenities? And also the spiritual resonance with Hangzhou people in terms of the legend of a white snake, whether it's really the kind of an amenity we're looking for. We cannot generalize everything. It seems that the theory can be interpretable, can be applied to many different scenarios. But when we really want to have a detailed discussion, we may find we just use a framework. We just use a concept. What you discussed is different from the theory itself. It's not organically connected with each other. So we can be more based on China's conditions. We are from 0 to 1. And in this process, we can summarize China's experience and practices to enrich and promote the further development of Sing theory. That's it, my sharing. Thank you. And thank you, Wei, for your analysis. It's pretty enlightening and it's pretty systemic. And now let's get into the last session, the closing ceremony. Teacher Chen Bo from Wuhan University will be the host. Thank you for your great speech. From the analysis tools and evolution mechanism of things to the theory and practice urban and rural things in the cultural space, the themes of these speeches in the morning are abundant, representing the most advanced progress in the same research. Now let's welcome Professor Clark to give us his closing remarks.
Thank you. Can you see me, hear me now, or is it? It's not yet my time.
It's very clear. Yes, it's very clear.
I'm asking, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And see me all right?
Yes, it's very clear.
For me to speak or not yet?
Yes, it's very clear. It's clear. Yes.
Yes. Yes, it's very clear. Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Is he still introducing me or shall I speak now?
You should speak now.
Okay. Thank you. It is a pleasure indeed to participate in this summit, which is a dramatic event in its own right. And we have seen again old and new themes combining in interesting ways. Let me perhaps take one example. That is, many of the general questions are very abstract and their answers can be very abstract, but it's hard to see how can I use these myself? How can I use these in my own context? So I find often the specific examples are very powerful. Let me just very briefly start with the bookstore as it was used if we had the bookstore plus the white snake as a literary specification of scenes, and how can scenes join with these? The selling of books, the bookstores, the opera, the the performance, the story. These were at the beginning, as we said in the scenescapes, in the discussion of holism, of joining together multiple pieces, such as we have been discussing them now. And Claude Lévi-Strauss, Wagner were classic examples of joining singing, story, actors, music, sound, drama, theatricality. How can you bring these to thousands of books if they're a large industrial type space, or if they are a more risky, a losing institution? So, for instance, about 20, 30 years ago, many people were saying the malls and the online organizations like Amazon and others, they will destroy bookstores, and they may destroy local retail stores altogether. Will they not be the case? And that argument was advanced by probably the most important architect in the world, is a Dutchman named Rem Koolhaas, who's a professor also at Harvard. And when he accepted the position of teaching at Harvard, it was on condition that he not do architecture, but that he write and do research about the context and where and how architecture is within a broader historical and cultural context. So he's done some very outspoken kinds of statements, one of which was a report which said the local shop will die because of the markets and the Amazon type phenomenon. And I would say in that respect, he was partly right, but also partly wrong. He was invited to this in part because of his PhD, and this is an excellent, useful book for those of you who are in architecture, urban planning, and government-led activities. Where and how can these plans or government kinds of creations which enhance the drama of the one of the major cities historically in the last 2 centuries was New York, and the book was called Delirious New York, which joins the emotional, dramatic side of the citizens of New York with the specific manifestations, such as the streets that are all square and like the traditional older European cities, but they have such things as the elevator, the safety elevator, which would permit buildings to go up. And the man who really developed this would demonstrate with a large crowd of people watching him, and he would go up his safety elevator, maybe 6 or 7 stories, and then suddenly the elevator would start to fall down as if it had broken its cable. But because it was a safety elevator, it caught the car and he was safely in place. And the crowd was so emotionally overwhelmed by this that this in turn spread, not just from that, but the drama of that scene has then been repeated in different ways around the world. Rem Koolhaas, his book on Delirious New York, his third work I'll mention here was to work on a large project for the European Union to make the trains, the railroad trains, as we've heard the discussion from the French tradition in the Vietnam Railroad. Rem Koolhaas was there to make even better the trains that would go from Paris to London and Brussels, because these are very, very actively used, but they also are competing with cars and competing with airplanes. And so they had to enhance the train. And to do that, they did so magnificently. One was inside the trains of having, for example, not one big box for food, but you'd have elegant servers giving you 7 courses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then each one would bring you to your seat. You'd be seated in your elegantly velvet covered chair, looking out the window, and then having this magnificent meal. Similarly, they would have the stations where they would stop. You mentioned they were French-styled stations in 1900, a century ago. Rem Koolhaas was then rebuilding many of these stations, so both for the passengers and the people waiting, into scenes where they would be more than just waiting. They could have food, they could have conversation, and more sorts of things. So what these illustrate is clearly the idea of holism, adding new, but the big question is the big question which Qi Ji is talking about with hustle bustle. She mentioned briefly what she presented 1 year ago. It was a brilliant paper published now. And what she did then with her student assistant, Kiran, where and how do specific scenes components like a cafe, like nightlife, the other things which she talked about as components of building hustle bustle, and it's in turn nightlife and scenes and success. That is, buzz is a concept which she built on there, but she did not just discuss it, she measured it in a very powerful, specific way. What specific combinations of other kinds of local shops could have a bigger and more interesting impact? All right, so these are, if you will, joining the bigger theory of scenes, which says we need to have what the economists can call multiplier effects. These are very critical kinds of aspects of a decision. What should we zone, or what should we build or not build? Will we permit local governments, city governments, to build housing or not, and what type? And the same thing as nationally. These are very controversial right now, as you know, in cities in China, as it is, and it is causing a huge amount of discussion on these kinds of issues. But what I'm pointing to is not just thinking of the narrow physical structure of the housing, but the more general scene around it. One more, linking this to Paris, with the beginning of the presentation, which had urban, with the urban bookstores. On the side, several times you saw there Shakespeare and Company. This is a very famous Paris bookstore for English-speaking and especially American presenters. And in Paris, American authors are not very important. They're pretty minor in terms of French literature. So they tried to do something and have the name Shakespeare and Company, who's not a very American name. But when I was teaching at the Sorbonne in Paris, I had an aunt, a great aunt of mine, and I invited her to dinner, and she came and she had a broken hip on her leg, and she is a poet who would write about the Atlantic Ocean in the area of Maine. Her poetry is several books about the waves, the rocks, and so forth. And so she was concerned that this might not be a dramatic theatrical topic for people in Paris to talk about the ocean and the rocks. Well, she then went to the session before her. That is, what we're showing here is a solution for the bookstore is to bring the author, have them to speak to people who can come and see how can the author talk about creating a new scene there. And before just a few weeks before she was presenting, one of the most important national radical Black power advocates from Oakland, California, was that he was there and he was expelled. That is, he ran away from the US. He was living in Algeria. The French would not let him come to France. So he came secretly from Algeria to Paris, and he stood on top of the table and said, Black power will be a revolution. Okay, so how could you, if you're going to present this the next week, what could she do? So she said, I guess I will have to stand on the table the way he did. But the problem was she's 80 years old and she wasn't as good at balancing as he was. And so she fell off of her table and broke her hip. So I saw her a few weeks later. I'm sorry, sad to be laughing, but it was a theatrical, dramatic scene, which she could not have been more dramatic if she had planned it. Okay, so what I'm pointing to is the joining of these multiple dimensions of not just talking, and you saw this explicitly with Dan Silver, we're not just doing urban rural. We're looking at many dimensions. We're looking at the shops of these, which Kiji has talked about in Hustle and Bustle. If we have these bigger concepts of looking for separate dimensions, and then under them, look for hundreds, not one or two, look for hundreds of indicators and where and how they can be combined, then we don't just talk about the Chinese rural village. There are many, many different combinations that become different rural villages. And these are thus transformations away from the 19th century concept of urban and rural, because we have become globalized everywhere to some degree. And China is more complicated than most because it has such a long, deep, complicated history, which interacts with the new and the international and the global and the innovative are all going on simultaneously, sometimes in the same street. And so where and how these components work and how they may join, one approach is to have the government lead, and this is called sometimes a plan. And so we're now working on, and these are themes on plans, culture, and scenes. And Bo Chen, who is leading this session right now, is planning another one on cultural tourism, where we're working on this as well. My point is how do we put these components together conceptually? And those may have led us to these big ideas. We didn't invent the 15 dimensions. Dan and I didn't invent any of these. We took these from the powerful themes from philosophers, from novelists, from others. And the book and the bookstore, thought of as a novel, when it was created at the end of the, around 1800, the novel was risque. Balzac in France, Dickens would come to America and he would have hundreds and hundreds of people listening to him in New York and Boston and so forth, in the same way that Balzac created the idea of Bohemia, and that in turn led to Baudelaire. And I'll just mention again for Dan Silver, his PhD is on the street in Baudelaire. He doesn't just do what you saw him do in this presentation, but these come together. So in these ways, these ideas of combining aesthetics, shock, specific multiplier effects, and how these can work with connections with a white snake. I'll just mention again some examples that I've had from just one example of this transformation. In the presentation you saw here rapidly, the dramatic expansion in the last 1 year of the summit. We've had over 100 new papers. This is almost, last year it was, we're up to 200. We have 200, we have 100 more in one short year. Raymond Tong, with his Chinese name, presented that number, and he worked in a seminar with me on his thesis, and he dealt with the intangible aesthetics and he studied them, as did several other Chinese students in the seminar. They studied how they're not following the interpretation of Bourdieu, as you saw that Maxime Jaffray talked about France, about you had the criticism of an alternative. Rather, the idea, the aesthetic, is a theme which we saw invoked initially with a white snake, can be put together with many shocking other elements. I won't go on here except to see that to try to begin to systematize, put together the findings as well as these dramatic new indicators, and to see and I'll just say explicitly, we need multiple methods. We stress, as Marta Klokotko are stressing in the handbook, not just one type of statistic, one type of number, one type of this or that. We also need many types of analysis and learn, because everything has its measurement error. Everything has its limitations, but other approaches, other studies, other samples. And then when we have Dan Silver do these dimensions and find that they match with Paris and Marseille so beautifully with the numbers of Paris and Marseille, totally independently, different data, different methodologies, and they come out with the same result. That's the powerful kind of thing that we look for. All right, let me stop there and thank all of you for encouraging us. And it's exciting to see this as progressive, rapidly growing, and continually improving from year to year. Onward with China.
好，非常感谢
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Clark, for your concluding remarks and speech. Till now, through the streaming platforms and for the wide participants, have reached 105 people. So this is a very big number. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank all the participants around the world. Next, I am going to invite Mr. Fu Caiwu, Distinguished Professor, Dr. Supervisor at Wuhan University, President of the National Institute of Culture Development, Wuhan University, Director of the National Research Base of Culture Tourism, and a Changjiang Scholar, awarded by Ministry of Education of China. Thank you. Can all of you hear my voice okay? Yes, we can. Thank you. Well, I am in COVID-19. Well, I have a better voice. I have a bad voice, but I am very attentive to this summit. For the excellent presentations by each speaker, I didn't miss none of you, and I have taken some notes. I'd like to give my 3 comments to share my feelings. Firstly, this summit is a quality summit, though we only have half day, But for experts, you show us your most updated research results. And for Western scholars, they show us their latest results. And for Chinese scholars, for the Things Academy, they show us their case study. And also they show us the updated results. Compared with the last year's summit, I can see a clear advance of this year's summit. This clear advance can be shown in the following aspects. Or the projects are based on the real case observation. For the Western scholars, they have a very big horizon and different perspective. For example, for the maximum, who mentioned about Paris, Marseille, and they gave a very broad overview. And they talked about the application of the Sing theory. And also they interpret Sing theory from the perspective of the modernization of cities, from the perspective of development of the cities. And they show the symbols of those cities by mentioning the Sing theory. And take Chinese scholars, for example. For we Chinese scholars, they have 4 flutes. The first flute, they mentioned about big space. The space also they mentioned about Beijing, Chengdu cities. And they study their case in Chengdu and Beijing. And also they have some concrete goal like urban bookstore, rural bookstore. They are individual cases. And also they have linear space like Yunnan, Vietnam railway, and also the intangible cultural inheritance like the tail of the white snake. Since I think there are 2 inspirations I got. Against the backdrop of vaccine, how can we have the research theme? This research theme, and we need to follow a standard. And what is the value of our theme? When you choose your topic, and you need to know how to choose your topic according to certain standard. Secondly, how do you find your data, material? So we learn from the Western scholars, how do we look for data? And when we look at the presentations presented by the Western scholars on the front pages of their PowerPoints, and they show how they collect the data. Around 1 century ago, Bush said, we need to take practice and we need to look for something. As a matter of fact, we need to look for resources, which means we need to do the field study, and also we need to have a good methodology, and we need to find a good way in looking for data. I think this is the strength of the Western scholars. So here we can see this is a quite quality summit and forum. Secondly, I'd like to share with you for the academic communication between Chinese scholars and Western scholars, and we need to find the Things Academy China. We need to find our own strength, and we need to be aware of our strength. What is the strength of Things Academy? I am one of the members of Things Academy. Last year, I wrote 2 articles. Those articles were published in the Journal of Wuhan University. Well, what is the advantage of China? Since the opening and reform, there is a fast transformation and development of Chinese society, which for the Chinese Academy, International Academy, especially for us, we're very close. It provides us an observation sample. This sample is very unique. This is our advantage. So for the Things Academy, we based ourselves on this unique, huge sample by using Sing theory to explain this transformation, this big change. So for the Sing Academy, Chineseization, localization, for Chinese scholars, they have been working hard and make contribution for these 10 years. And for this year, for this year's summit, you show us your results for your more than 10 years research. And also Professor Chen Bo and Professor Daniel, they show their studies, and their studies are very outstanding and highlight. And Mr. Chen Bo and Mr. Daniel, they work together and they have the column in Wuhan University. And for the 4 iteration models and most frontier results are published here.
And the Xing theory used in the urban area is one of the most important contributions of Chinese scholars. Comparatively speaking, we are a bit lagged behind. Western scholars have a more international point of view, and they adopt different methods in a unique way. Why methodology matters? Because Xing theory as an open-ended theory and research system, it emphasizes case studies, but case studies analysis cannot replace methodology's improvement. So I will use Marx's quote: the criticism of a weapon cannot replace the critical weapon cannot replace the criticism of weapon. And we can see Google Places is used to analyze the progress of urbanization and to compare the major cities theory of development. These are all really advanced achievements, but so far Chinese scholars haven't reached that level. That's my second thought. My third thought is the direction for in-depth analysis of Xing theory. There are 3 points that worth our attention. Firstly, the domesticated research of Xing theory. Professor Wei Jian made a really great point. Last year, he published 101 papers, some of them on Xing theories, and I read most of them because I wrote 2 papers on Xing theory. In my point of view, localization analysis has the biggest shortcoming, which is theme is set prior to case study selections. So they choose theme first, and the theme is Chinese style. Documents and materials are used to prove the correctness of Xing theory. This is the biggest weakness of China's use and application of Xing theory. This is what we need to avoid, trying our best. So we should be problem-oriented, methodology-oriented, instead of the vice versa. Secondly, Chinese experience should be used to explain China's modern transformation using Xing theory. We account for 19% of the global population. So it's a global issue. No academic topic has ever been. So I think our research should be global, because our research is based on this large amount of people. And Clark also makes a good point. So we are a country that based on Confucianism. We're different from Western countries based on another religion. So Christianity is different from what we believe in. Now we have different cultural factors in our research. What we need to think about is to reach a higher level. If we have the summit forum next year, do we have a higher level achievement from Chinese scholars that can show us their progress in this regard? Thirdly, China and the world from the perspective of a global development. 100 years ago, Mr. Liang Qichao talked about 3 stages of China's history development. China's China and China, the world's China, and also Asia's China. That's the 3 stages. So if we want to solve Chinese problems, we should not see it from the China's perspective. We should take China into the bigger picture, the global context. In the 20th CPC report, China's style of modernization should be based on the global context with Chinese characteristics. And we use Xing theory to explain the common things between China and the world. China's experience should be globalized for us to reach a consensus around the globe. That's the 3rd stage. Academic research. That's some immature opinions from me. So if there are something that is not correct, you can have a discussion with me. So all the professors here, you are really what I should learn from. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Fu. You've put forward 3 directions. So we can hear, right? So the three directions Professor Fu mentioned are what we need. So not just us, all the audience online, the entire audience online. You are what our future is. You should also take notes of that. Now, on behalf of the academic consortium, I'd like to have the declaration of the academic consortium of Xing in 2022. Dear experts and academic colleagues, today with the theme of Xing and the quality of life, we gather together again to look forward to the future of China's Xing research. Since the establishment of the Xing Academic Consortium in 2020, in more than 2 years, the Xing Summit Forum has gone from immature to mature, attracting the attention of nearly 1 million people. Now that the academic innovation and social practice of Xing theory are further expanded, the Xing Academic Consortium will preserve and work together to continuously promote the localization of Xing theory. Today's Xing, through the cultural context, has a profound impact on our lives, public service, urban and rural planning, integration of culture and tourism, industrial development, daily consumption. Xing participation in many aspects of urban and rural life brought people more diverse effect experience, adapted residents' spiritual picture, spiritual life, and an emotional pursuit. From the top level design of relevant documents such as the 14th Five-Year Plan, Digital Economy Development Plan, and opinions on high-quality development of public culture to the planning and construction of local provinces and cities, the Xing has gradually entered the policy vision. Chengdu, Shenzhen, and other cities, we can see the application of practice. Under the impetus of the Xing academic group. The Sing theory is continuously innovating and breaking through. Its influence continues to stand. It has achieved fruitful results. In 2022, we continue to initiate Sing dialogues in a normal way and conduct in-depth exchange and discussion with many experts, scholars, and urban educators from universities in the United States, Canada, and other countries. History, sociology, and many other different disciplines work together to promote the development of Sing theory. In the past year, we have got a lot of paper published, and we can see in-depth exchanges and discussions with many experts, scholars, and urban influencers. In 110 papers, they are related to the Sing, and a number of topics about Sing proof and Sing theory appeared in more academic fields. In rural revitalization, the creation of public Sing empowers rural governance and condense spiritual strength. In urban governance, the Sing is putting path for the spirit of the cultural brands. Here, on behalf of all members of Sing Academy, we hereby would like to make a commitment. We take the Chinese modernization process in a new era as the grand goal, strive together professional scholars from different disciplines, and continuously promote Chinese paradigm of Sing research, while continue to carry out cross-cultural, cross-disciplinary, and interdisciplinary cooperation with universities, enterprises, governments, and institutions at home and abroad, hold high-quality academic activities, and promote dialogue between theory and practice, while work together to promote Sing-based theory to strive China's social, cultural, economic, and ecological development, provide theoretical support for China's high-quality development in the new era, provide innovative solutions to meet people's needs for a better life. All members of the Sing Academy are ready to work together to achieve all these goals, and we invite you to join us. Thank you very much. Thank you, the scholars from around the world to support the summit. We're approaching the end of the summit. Thank you again for your participation, and thank you about 8 million audience online for joining us, and hope to see you next year. And we are looking forward to the final of the World Cup. We hope France and Argentina can have a really great match. It's the end of our forum. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you. 谢谢. 谢谢.
谢谢 ，Thank you，
谢谢。
Thank you，谢谢。
好，再见，谢谢。
好，再见，再见。我知道那边很晚了，我知道在美国那边、美
哦
国、法国
再见
那边都很晚了。好，谢谢，在美国、法国都很晚了。
好，
好，谢谢各位老师，
Hello.
谢谢。
哎。
Thank you so much. I know it's very late in the United States and France. So see you again. Stay safe.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
From France, from
Did
Paris.
they say that it was 8 million? Or is that sounds
No,
it
it's
were
800,000.
800,000? Okay, no, well, that still is substantially larger than last year. That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
And all of those papers and all these new ideas, it's just great to see.
Yes, thank you very much.
And
Would it be possible to share the recording with every participant?
Yeah, we offer simultaneous interpretation just on some
it's
搜狐、
mute.
腾讯、搜狐，我看是哪几个？Let me see.
搜狐、网易、中国网。
搜狐、网易 some Chinese platform to offer simultaneous interpretation to all over the world.
Professor Zhifei, we may make 2 records of this conference. So if you need a recording, we can send you afterwards.
Yes, in the
Yes.
last year, it was recorded and posted, and you could have either language would be available, and I would expect they will do the same. That was recorded, I saw throughout.
Yes, we
So
are
thank
recording,
you
of
for
course.
having
Excellent.
Thank you.
谢谢.
and wonderful new French slides. Your pictures are much new and dramatic. Thank you.
Thank you.
You worked on those, and they were beautiful.
谢谢 谢谢傅老师，谢谢来自法国的、来自加拿大、美国的各位专家、波兰的各位专家，谢谢中国的各位专家。谢谢。
Thank you, all the scholars, experts, and audience from around the world. Goodbye.
Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye bye.